Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was the descendant of a wizard in Harry Potter. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by MANNY0101 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Naruto Uzumaki, a man who was once a ninja of Konohagakure no Sado, stood atop a mountain as he looked at the vast lush of green forest. He has lived for more than 500 years and has been through many wars, risking his life multiple times to save the ninja world. Being able to heal from any kind of injuries and sickness, he had grown tired of living while all his friends and family had long since perished. Now, he had a smile on his face as his time with Kurama, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, was finally coming to an end. He was about to free his friend from his prison and in the process, pass on to the kingdom come. He was happy, he was content. "Kurama, I guess it's time," he said quietly. "Do you really have to do it?" The beast replied with a sorrowful tone. "This world might still need you. You're Naruto Uzumaki, a legend. Even though chakra is dying, there are people who look up to you. You're their hope. Are you sure you want to give it all up? Those people will die and I'll be the only one left. My descendants have already left the elemental nations. I have nothing left here. I want you to be free and live with your siblings. I have lived for far too long. I never wanted to be immortal. Though I'll never be able to repay you for saving my life for God knows how many times, but no, I never wanted this. I wanted to grow old like Jai-chan and die of old age. I have made up my mind and I am ending this once and for all." Kurama kept his silence. Though he wanted to be free and be with the rest of his siblings, he didn't want Naruto to die. He was Kurama's first friend and was the man Kurama respected. "When you reform, I want you to go where the rest of the eight are. Together you can't be captured. Goodbye old friend, I really cherish every memory you were part of." Kurama grunted as his eyes welled up. Naruto made a few hand seals, grabbed the seal on his stomach and twisted it to release Kurama. As Kurama was being expelled out of the seal, Naruto's life flashed across his eyes. He smiled wistfully as he saw all his people smiling back at him. He was going to see them again. Darkness took over Naruto as Kurama was finally expelled and he fell down the cliff never to wake up again. Rots. Edmund Vulpes woke up with a start, gasping for air. He had been having dreams about that man for years, ever since he touched an ancient-looking scroll in his mother's possession. Claire Vulpes, Edmund's mother, belonged to the House of Whirlpool that was nearly wiped out in the war against Grindelwald. She was a loving woman and she loved Edmund more than anything else. She was married to Alter Vulpes, a blood purist who used to be a Death Eater and avoided Azkaban by underhanded methods through an old marriage contract. When Edmund was born on 24 April 1980, Claire was ecstatic as he looked nothing like his father. He was born with sun-kissed blonde hair and electric blue eyes like hers and naturally tanned skin, just like Claire's father. But the most striking feature were the whisker-like marks on his cheeks, just like she had seen in her house's progenitor's portrait. Her ancestors had moved to medieval England back in 1200s from a faraway land where her progenitor was born. They had interbred with the wizards and thus the House of Whirlpool was born. Alter was quite hostile towards Claire when he saw not a single thing in his son that resembled him. Since that day, Alter made sure to make their lives miserable. Extended exposure to Cruciaticus' curse from the Dark Lord had twisted his mind. When the Dark Lord was vanquished, he had no output left for his madness. So he took it out on the mother-son pair. Although Claire was a talented wizard, she was unable to defend herself and Edmund from Alter. After 7 years of torture, she succumbed to her physical and psychological wounds. Edmund had sworn for revenge that day. He would kill his father and his Dark Lord if he ever returned as his father hoped he would. After a tear-filled goodbye to his mother, he was rummaging through his mother's belongings as he was told by her in her dying breath. That was when he found the ancient scroll. When he touched the scroll, he felt a similar kind of warmth rush into him, which happened only when his mother hugged him and all his wounds would heal. He knew it wasn't magic as his mother told him, but he was quite familiar with this kind of warmth. He knew he had the same kind of warmth in him, but no one else seemed to have it. He could sense it in his mother, but no one else. Quite similarly, the warmth healed his wounds and beyond. He opened the scroll and looked at the scribblings carefully. They were in the foreign language which Claire had taught him. As he read the scroll, he learned briefly about his mother's house and its history. Following the instructions, he pricked his thumb and placed it on a circle with strange symbols on it. When his blood came in contact with the seal, the scroll began to glow. Edmund felt the warmth flow in him, but this time, it was not comfortable. He felt like his body was on fire. It took all his willpower to stop himself from screaming. His eyes began to glow, and his whole body was covered by an extensive amount of blue aura. He felt memories flow into his brain that caused him a splitting headache. The pain was unbearable and he fainted, but not before seeing the scroll vaporize. He woke up 2 days later in St. Mungo's. After being discharged from hospital, he attended his mother's funeral. Nobody noticed the hate-filled looks he was sending towards his father, who was casually talking to Lucius Malfoy, another Death Eater who avoided Azkaban by throwing galleons away. That was the night when he first had the dream about Naruto. Since then, he had been having dreams about Naruto's life. He learned that the strange warmth was called chakra, a form of energy that people in Naruto's era used to do all kinds of stuff and was essential for their survival. He learned how Naruto became the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, how he spent his early life, his life as a genin, and the various shinobi wars he was part of. Naruto was hailed as a hero for his people. For hundreds of years he had lived and fought for peace in his land. But nature itself seemed to be against him. A virus was born that fed on chakra. Slowly, everyone died due to lack of chakra, and children were being born completely devoid of it. The last of the ninjas died as Naruto's descendants left the elemental nations after a lot of persuasion. 4 years of having dreams about Naruto's life, Edmund learned how he finally ended his life, thus freeing his friend from his prison. In those 4 years, Edmund grew into a rather healthy 11-year-old, despite all the torture from his father. Since the day he awakened his chakra, Edmund was rather tolerant to pain. His senses became stronger, he had faster reflexes, heightened awareness and a sturdy body with denser muscles. Although he was still a kid, one could see that he had a rather defined body and was taller for his age. Having seen the life Naruto lived, he knew how important it was to be able to control chakra. So, he began practicing chakra control. At 11, he was able to run on water for hours before he was down to 20% of his chakra capacity. To increase his reserves, Edmund would drain himself to exhaustion before going to sleep and use chakra whenever he got a chance. Since he didn't have any scrolls for how to perform different ninja techniques as his mother had very scarce amount of chakra, he had to postpone his plans for them till he could access the Whirlpool family vault in Gringotts. The scroll had told him that there were some scrolls based on various ninja arts stored in the vaults. He recalled how Naruto learned Rasengan and was able to perform it after a few weeks of training. He knew that the technique would be rather lethal if used on normal humans, as they didn't have chakra-enhanced bodies. He was able to do some other simple ninjutsu techniques such as Kawarumi, Bushin and Henge. He had learnt them with little effort and was quite proficient in them. He had seen ninjas perform them without hand seals in the dreams and trained in doing so himself. He was rather envious when he learnt that his chakra reserves were nowhere near as huge as Naruto's, but he knew he could compensate it with heightened chakra control and gradual increase of chakra capacity. As Edmund got out of his bed after witnessing the death of Naruto Uzumaki, he quickly washed his face in a basin and asked a house elf to bring him a calming draft. Seeing people die in his dreams was never a pleasant experience. Although he was rather heartened after seeing so many deaths, it was still unsettling how Naruto's life ended. Sometimes he wondered how those memories managed to be sealed in the scroll. He was broken out of his musings when an owl arrived with his Hogwarts letter. He softly patted the owl and gave it some owl treat. He quickly sent his reply and went downstairs to inform his evil father about the letter. Alter was waiting on the dining table for breakfast. He noticed Edmund approaching him and understood that the letter had arrived. The letter came. "I've sent the reply already." He only received a nod with a grunt. They had their breakfast quietly. Just as Edmund was about to leave, Alter spoke up, "Go to Diagon Alley yourself and buy what you have to." He threw a pouch towards Edmund rather arrogantly, which he easily caught and continued, "I don't have time to babysit you, so get what you want yourselves. The pouch has around 2,000 galleons and that's all you'll need." "Umpus shit," Edmund cursed in his mind as he nodded and left the dining room with a menacing glint in his eyes. "Just you wait, I will rip you apart with my bare hands and dissolve the Vulpes house that you're so proud of." After about an hour, Edmund changed into his public robes and used the Flu network to go to Diagon Alley. Chapter 2. On his way to his mother's vault, Edmund was going through a myriad of emotions. Reading his mother's will and learning about the deceit of the Vulpes family patriarch that forced her to marry his father made him furious. Edmund's grandfather had not only forced a marriage contract on Claire, but also killed off the rest of her family a day after the marriage. With a wand aimed at her little sister, Claire was forced to take an oath to never harm the Vulpes family. Later, her entire family was slaughtered by Death Eaters. All this time, Alter was completely unaware of the will. Claire had carefully hidden a lot of her family scrolls and galleons in her vault. She had written about how the Vulpes family betrayed Whirlpool family's trust and took over all their business and land. To say that Edmund was angry was an understatement. When he had finished reading the will, he lost control over his chakra and the goblins got a glimpse of what could happen to the boy's enemies. His first goal was to slowly cripple the finances of the family while keeping a low profile. By the time he reached majority, the Vulpes family would be reduced to beggars. By providing a few drops of blood, he opened the vault. There were a few storage scrolls that had various weapons stored in them. There were quite a lot of scrolls on various ninja arts and hand-to-hand combat techniques. Then he saw the Uzumaki swirl on the wall of the vault that made him feel oddly nostalgic. The Whirlpool family used the swirl as their family crest to remember where they came from. A quick accounts check informed him about the total amount of money he had. After taking all the necessary scrolls and storing all of them in a bigger one out of the vault, he traveled back to his accounts manager and asked for help in increasing his wealth and bringing down the Vulpes family. After being asked why he wanted to do so, he reluctantly shared his story. At the end of it, the manager had a vicious grin on his face and readily agreed to help Edmund. After a 2-hour discussion on counter-investments against Vulpes family and an agreement on regularly emptying his trust vault into the Whirlpool vault and keeping the transaction hidden, Edmund thanked the manager and left the bank to buy other stuff for Hogwarts. 5 hours later, he approached his last destination in the alley to buy a wand. The old man in the shop was oddly unnerving. Edmund kept his guard up. "Ah, Mr. Vulpes, I've been expecting you. I still remember when you mother and father," but looking at the menacing glare Edmund shot at him at the mention of his father, "though I guess you don't want to hear about that." Edmund nodded. "So, which is your wand arm?" "Ambidextrous." "Ah. Alright." Quietly, he took the measurements, but on the inside, he was itching to say something. The young heir was quite difficult. "Mr. Vulpes, try this one." "Crash, no, definitely not this one. No. Please try to hold back on your magic." "Try this one." "Boom, yeah, please hold back a little more. I don't have infinite supply of wands." "Try this one." No. "Agumenti maybe, Mr. Vulpes, try this one." After trying 30 wands and destroying 20 of them along with burning half the store, Edmund finally found a wand that fit him. Not that it really mattered. Wizards and witches were not extraordinary in terms of speed and strength, so he could always dominate them by casting faster. It didn't matter if his wand was strong or not. Being able to use chakra, magic was a novelty for him. Although magic was useful in its own way, chakra had more offensive power. Quickly putting the wand in his holster and paying generously for the damage as it was his father's money, he went to the leaky cauldron and flew back to his manor. Over the next few months, Edmund subtly got away from any kind of torture after he learned some genjutsu. Since no one else had chakra, dispelling even the weakest of genjutsu was beyond the wizards. His father had completely forgotten about punishing him and went on with his usual business. Genjutsu allowed Edmund to fool his father and train freely. After he learned some decent amount of genjutsu, he focused mainly on chakra control, gyuinjutsu and some other basic ninjutsu. Along with that, he had his shadow clones read through the weapon scrolls and his first-year course books. At evenings he would practice taijutsu against his clones, while some other clones would sit on the sidelines and analyze the spars. The day he came back from Diagon Alley and read some scrolls, he was elated to see the technique that could prove to be a boon for him. It was Naruto Uzumaki's most used jutsu in his younger days, Shadow Clone Jutsu. At first he was able to produce 25 clones and could maintain them for half an hour. But gradually, he increased that number to 45 and could maintain them for 2 hours. Using shadow clones gave him a much needed boost in his learning ability and chakra control. September came quickly and he was ready to go to Hogwarts. Packing everything he needed, he got dressed in his school robes and flew to platform 9 3/4. At 10, the Hogwarts Express started moving. Edmund sat in an empty compartment in the middle and began reading a book on ancient runes which he found in the Whirlpool family vault. A few minutes later, the door opened and a girl glanced into the compartment and asked meekly, "Hi, may I sit here? I wanted to sit somewhere quiet." Edmund didn't lift his eyes from his book and replied blandly as he turned the page, "Sure, why not?" The girl sat comfortably opposite to him and began enjoying the scenery outside. Edmund was silently relieved that the girl wasn't talking to him. But the peace did not last long as the door of the compartment was violently opened and a boy entered. "Hi, can I sit here? My brother's friend was showing them his Petachromatalda and I am not a fan of spiders." The girl glanced at Edmund with uncertainty. Edmund just nodded, again without looking up, said, "Sit." The boy immediately sat down next to him, a bit too close for his liking, and began talking to the girl straight away. "Hi. I'm Ron Weasley. And you are?" The girl gently smiled and replied, "I'm Iris Potter." That made Edmund look up from his book. Iris had the prettiest emerald eyes he had ever seen. She had wavy black hair that were tied in a ponytail. Her bangs were hiding her forehead and her scar. Her skin was pale, but the color was not healthy. It took a few seconds for Edmund to deduce that she was undernourished. That made him narrow his eyes. Why is the girl who lived so scrawny and underfed? She looks like she'll collapse any moment now. Isn't she being taken care of? He again focused on her eyes. He noticed she was lacking something else. She did not wear spectacles. The famous eyesight defect in all Potters was missing. Her eyes exuded kindness, purity, hope and wisdom beyond someone of her age. Iris, fitting. Ron, upon hearing her name dramatically widened his eyes and shouted, "Are you really?" Edmund slightly cringed. "She's sitting 3 feet away, no need to shout you twit." Then Ron asked something that Edmund thought was quite stupid. "Do you have the scar?" Iris shifted uncomfortably in her seat for a moment but then smiled and lifted her bangs to show the famous lightning bolt scar. It wasn't as big as was depicted in the books, but it was there. Edmund deduced that Iris didn't like people looking at it, so he went back at observing her eyes. Ron again asked a question that almost made Edmund to slap his forehead. "So, do you remember how they died? How you know who looked?" What an ass. You do not ask a child if she remembers how her parents died or how the killer looked. This git didn't even think before asking that. Definitely the worst kind of Gryffindor. He'll put Crabbe and Goyle to shame. Iris's lip twitched as her smile fell. She was fighting herself from lashing out at Ron. She calmed herself down and replied, "No, I don't. I was 15 months old. I don't remember anything from that time." Ron had the decency to look sheepish. He looked towards Edmund and asked the inevitable, "Hey mate, what's your name? You've been quiet the whole time." Edmund stared into his eyes. Ron backed away a little. Those sapphire eyes were really haunting. Edmund had been training in what he called the Tenzo face because it was a bit creepy. Ron felt like he was being stripped down to his very soul. Fortunately for him, Edmund turned away and stared at Iris who was looking at him expectantly. Edmund. Chapter 3. Iris Potter was completely overwhelmed by the events that had happened recently in her life. Her aunt and uncle were not good people and always treated her harshly. They never harmed her physically, apart from occasional slaps from her aunt if she messed up while cooking or cleaning. Her uncle would shout at her every time Dudley broke something. They'd treat like a servant. But what made her miserable was that she had no clue why they hated her. The day of her birthday, she discovered that she was a witch and her aunt had been lying to her for all her life. Her parents were not some drunkards who died in a car accident, they were powerful wizards who sacrificed their life so that she could continue to live. She was happy that she had such wonderful parents, but sad that they were truly gone. The day she went to get her school supplies with Hagrid went as a blur. When she arrived at the Leaky Cauldron, she was hounded by the crowd as they thanked her for something she didn't know. She was scared on seeing so many people trying to shake her hand. Upon learning the name of her parents' murderer and how terrible he was, she got worried when Hagrid told her that he believed he was not dead. She was fascinated but somewhat scared when she saw the goblins. She liked Hagrid. He was a good person according to her and even bought her a snowy owl. She had never seen such a beautiful owl in her life. She was peeved by the man who sold her a wand, but what terrified her was the fact that her wand was a sister wand to the one that killed her parents and gave her the scar. Iris was not happy when Hagrid disappeared without telling her about the platform from where she had to ride the express. She thanked whatever gods were up there when a family of redheads helped her get through the barrier. The platform was noisy, much to her discomfort, but she liked it when no one really recognized her. When she entered the compartment where a boy was sitting, she prepared herself to be hounded by questions, but much to her delight, the boy gave her no mind and kept on reading his book. He was tall from what she could see and thought he was a year or two ahead of her. But she noticed that he did not wear any of the house colors, so he must be a first year like her. She wanted to introduce herself, but could see that he was not interested in talking to anyone. So she kept quiet and enjoyed the scenery outside the window. He didn't even take his eyes away from his book till she introduced herself to Ron. Iris was not happy when Ron asked about the night her parents died. She was relieved when Ron focused his attention to the boy sitting opposite to her, who had been at her without even blinking. She looked at him expectantly and was desperate to take Ron's attention away from her. She noticed the boy's expression soften upon looking at her when he finished scaring Ron by what she could say the scariest poker face she had ever seen. "Edmund. Edmund," he said. The boy was not very social. His spiky hair were not blonde, they were golden. One could say they were the brightest of yellow. His sapphire eyes reminded her of the ocean. She could see a faint glow in them but didn't try to pry upon it. His skin was tanned but she could tell that it was natural. What surprised her were the faint whisker-like marks on his cheeks. They reminded her of a cat or a fox. Maybe it was a family trait, she didn't know. "Do you know which house you'll get in?" "I bet I'll go to Gryffindor. My whole family was in Gryffindor. Anyway, I guess we'll know at the sorting. Do you know any magic?" "My brothers taught me one. It turns my pet rat's hair yellow. Wanna see?" Ron babbled and began reciting a spell. Both Iris and Edmund shared a look. Ron was talking a lot and Iris noticed that Edmund was starting to get annoyed. Before Ron could finish his spell, a girl with bushy brown hair entered the compartment and said, "Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Neville have lost it." When everyone shook their heads, she eyed Ron and noticed he had a wand out. Her eyes lit up and she asked, "Oh. You're doing a spell, let's see." Ron cleared his throat and recited the spell again, only for nothing to happen. "I don't think that's a spell," the girl started. "I've tried some on my own. But they worked for me." She took out her wand and chanted, "Lumos." "Anyway," she continued as she said, "Nox. I'm Hermione Garner. And you are?" "Rots." Edmund was really getting annoyed. First, the red-headed weasel couldn't keep his mouth shut when he was trying to read. Even upon using his Tenzo face, he couldn't get the weasel to shut up. Then he uttered a completely ridiculed spell which was obviously a prank by his brothers. Edmund didn't know what to say about that. The girl that had entered their compartment, Hermione Granger, was obviously a Muggleborn. The way she showed off how much she had read and demonstrated a first-year spell, she definitely didn't have many friends. Not like he had any say in that. When Iris introduced herself, Hermione squealed and went on a diatribe about how much she had read about Iris. Poor Iris had nothing to say for that. She didn't even know of any books being written about her. Hagrid had been highly cryptic and bought all the books for her. She didn't notice it, but Hagrid hadn't told her anything about the wizarding world. The rest of the ride was uneventful, except when Edmund bought everything from the food trolley and asked Ron to stuff everything in his mouth and stop talking. He regretted saying that as Ron quite literally stuffed his mouth with food. It was nighttime when the train arrived at Hogsmeade train station. All the first years were asked to sit in the boats as they were taken to the castle. Edmund marveled at the beauty of the castle. He could feel the magic around him. Upon reaching the castle, they were asked to stop at the stairs for a professor to come and escort them to the Great Hall. Edmund was quietly looking around when a very annoying ferret decided to disturb him. "I heard the girl who lived was coming to Hogwarts this year. My name is Malfoy, Draco Malfoy," the annoying ferret said as he went in front of the crowd of first years, facing Iris. The weasel couldn't control himself and snickered. The ferret took offense of that and retorted, "Find my name funny, do you? Let me guess, red hair, hand-me-down rags, you must be a Weasley." He again looked at Iris and said, "You must choose wisely who you hang around with. Stay away from the wrong sort." Well, that's that. Really smooth. The chap lost his chance to be a friendly. Edmund was sure that Iris would respond in an unkindly way. "No thanks. I think I know what the right and wrong sort are." "There you go." And so it begins. The enmity between the ferret and the raven. Edmund sighed. Well, I guess school years won't be too boring with these two around. By the time the ferret could retort, a stern-looking professor came and introduced herself and escorted all the first years to the Great Hall. As Edmund looked around, he heard Hermione tell someone about the enchanted ceiling and where she read it. The Sorting Hat sang a song, and the students were then asked to go one by one on the platform and get sorted. The Bones heiress was sorted to Hufflepuff along with the Abbott heiress. The Greengrass and Davis heiresses were sorted into Slytherin. When it was Hermione's turn, Edmund was certain that she'd go to Ravenclaw. But, to his surprise, she was sorted into Gryffindor. Just like the rest of his family, the gluttonous weasel was sorted in Gryffindor, while the pompous ferret into Slytherin along with his two trolls. When Iris was called to be sorted, the whole hall went silent as the professors watched eagerly, while a greasy bat sneered. Great. Way to make a child comfortable. It took 7 minutes for Iris to get sorted. Edmund wondered what kind of conversation the two were having. She was finally sorted into Gryffindor. Vulpus, Edmund. As he was going towards the hat, Edmund heard the weasel say something to Iris and those sitting around them that ruined his mood. He's Edmund Vulpus, the Vulpus family heir. Dark ones they all are. His father was a known Death Eater. Bet he'll be sorted into Slytherin. Slimy snakes. Comparing me to my father, good one weasel. But, it'll be a bloodbath if I am sorted into yours or that ferret's house. Edmund quietly sat down on the stool and placed the hat on his head. Hello, wise hat. Hello to you too, lad. Let's see where you might belong. You are certainly a whirlpool. I have never seen a spiral as strong as you since the first one. He was able to combine magic and chakra into one and became the strongest wizard for 2 centuries. They all were Gryffindors. But you, the first thing you'll do is slaughter all of them. Well, except little Miss Potter, eh? Yes, she will have an interesting life. A life of hardships for sure. Anyway, though you are very ambitious and cunning, you won't be able to tolerate them. Same goes for Hufflepuff. Ah. You seek knowledge. I know just where to put you. Better be Ravenclaw. When Edmund placed the hat back on the chair, he looked around to see various reactions of the students. Some Slytherins felt betrayed while others were conflicted. The Ravenclaws clapped politely while the Hufflepuffs and Gryffindors remained indifferent. When he looked at the weasel, he smirked. The weasel was looking embarrassed because Iris was looking at him while raising an eyebrow. Edmund sat down next to a first year who introduced herself as Padma Paddle. After some brief introductions, they continued looking as the rest of the students were sorted. The dinner was served and Edmund ate his food while making idle conversations, but he mostly kept to himself. The old coot or the headmaster known as Albus No Shits Given Dumbledore gave a closing speech. When he mentioned about the third floor and how dangerous it was, Edmund had only one thought in his mind. This old coot has gone absolutely barmy. Who the hell allows life-threatening stuff in schools anyway? Maybe I should anonymously contact St. Mungo's to get him checked for brain damage. After the feast, the prefects were asked to lead the first years to their dorms. Rots. Months went by as the classes began. Edmund studied diligently while he continued his training in jutsus. When he reached his dorm on the first night, he was greatly relieved to see that he did not have to share it with anyone. Before going to sleep, he took out a chakra paper from a storage scroll and pushed some of his chakra into it. He had 3 affinities: earth, thunder and fire. Thus far he had made good progress in his elemental manipulation. Since he had clones and a lot of time, he refrained from learning any elemental jutsus and focused on simple manipulation and control. He wanted to have perfect control over his elements and wanted to make it instinctive. So, he had his clones practice elemental control and sealing, while his real body went for classes and did further physical training. It was a good thing he knew expansion charms, otherwise training would have been a lot more difficult. He had been looking for a suitable place to train where he would be able to train without being found. So far he had no luck, which frustrated him. Edmund had made a few friends who he liked to stay around. He would create a clone to spend time with them while studying in the library or in the common room to play Exploding Snap. Since they were mere children, their slaps on the back or a punch on the arm felt like a feather brushing past his skin. He barely had any contact with Iris Potter. He would see her in classes as she hung out with the Weasel and Granger. He never understood why she was letting the Weasel stay around her. He was a rude and stupid child with a pea-sized brain and the stomach of an elephant. Edmund would say a hello or nod to her whenever they would cross each other in corridors or in classrooms, and nothing beyond that. Edmund had seen Draco Ferret Malfoy trotting around in the corridors trying to pick a fight with Iris. Sometimes, he was stalking her and did everything to get her into trouble. He loathed the ferret. He was everything that Edmund found repulsive. He had heard incidents of him being blatantly favored by Severus Greasy Snape, which further made him angry. All in all, Draco Malfoy was making his way into Edmund's shit list, as he called it. Rots. Soon it was Christmas, and Edmund was scaling the walls of the castle while idly practicing chakra control. Nothing noteworthy had happened since he joined the school except the troll incident on Halloween. It was quite amusing to watch fumbling Quirrell faint right in the middle of the hall. Sometimes he wondered if the rest of the teachers knew about his act. Edmund had caught upon it in the first of class. He knew the difference between a real stutter and a fake one. A certain Hyuga was quite famous for it in her younger years. Edmund had sensed the troll going to the girls' restroom, but he missed Hermione being there. He was quite relieved to know the next day that she didn't pay for his error with her life. When he heard that Iris along with the Weasel had saved Granger from the troll, he was actually surprised. It was quite brave and foolish on their part to try and take on a troll on their own. Since then he began noticing the subtle pattern in the way Iris acted in the classes. She always held back, and he knew that she was purposefully sabotaging her own work so as to not come out as a show-off and a glory seeker as many had thought her to be. The determination to keep her friends was so strong in her that she was downplaying herself in every single way so that they do not get jealous. She always kept her work similar to that of the Weasels and let the Granger satisfy her ego for being at the top. He finally deduced the reason behind it: Iris Potter probably had no friends back at her place. She was so desperate to have friends that she was willing to let the Weasel be around her even when he got her into loads of trouble. Edmund for the first time in his life felt guilty for misjudging her. Edmund always kept a close eye on her movements from that moment on. He learned of all the trouble they got into, mostly due to the Weasel. He learned what was hidden behind the door on the third-floor corridor, about the wraith that had been drinking unicorn blood in the forest, and about their foolish yet understandable accusation of Snape trying to kill Iris during the Quidditch match against Slytherin. He knew it was Quirrell who was behind all those attempts and his purpose behind it. The dark aura that reeked off of Quirrell was proof enough to deduce that Lord Moldeshirts was somehow still alive. He had sensed a similar yet milder aura coming off his father's arm. He had planted a clone, hinged as a fly, on Quirrell so that he could always remain informed about his whereabouts. Edmund was shaken off his musings when he heard footsteps leading towards the library. Curiously, he followed the sound as it led to the restricted section. Edmund raised his eyebrows slightly as the owner of the feet that made the sound revealed themselves to be none other than Iris Potter. What the hell is she doing here? That too in the restricted section. Then he heard her muttering about Nicholas Flamel. Flamel, why the bloody hell is she looking for him in the restricted section? Just check the book about famous witches and wizards in 20th century. Then he heard Mrs. Norris snarl at Iris and Filch coming towards them. He followed Iris as she ran away from him and witnessed the brief confrontation between Quirrell and Snape before they were led away by Filch. Edmund followed Iris into a room that had a large mirror placed at the center. Iris stood in front of the mirror for a long time and reached out to it. Confused, Edmund silently hinged onto a fly and sat on her shoulder to take a look at the mirror. What he saw next surprised him. He saw himself, standing beside him was his mother who was smiling at him. She looked strong and healthy, unlike the sickly pale complexion and starved appearance she always had. He looked at the carvings below the mirror and understood what the mirror was. Looking at Iris, he guessed what she was seeing. And it was probably correct. She was seeing her family, alive and happy. Deciding that it was enough, he flew out of the room and appeared once again, this time as his usual self. "Otter, what are you doing here?" he asked in a very convincing manner, startling the girl. "Rots." Iris enjoyed the best Christmas she'd ever had. She was woken up by her dorm mate and best friend Hermione, telling her that she got presents. For the first time in her life, someone had given her presents for any occasion. Going through the gifts, she found out that many of the students had gifted her with sweets, some gave her books, she even received a pullover from the Weasleys with an I knitted on it. Last but not the least, someone had given her a cloak that belonged to her dad. It was none other than an invisibility cloak. Although she was sad that Hermione was going away for the holidays, at least Ron was staying behind. Hermione had hinted her to look for Nicholas Flamel in the library's restricted section, and that was what she was doing that night. When she was found out by Filch's cat, she ran into a confrontation between Snape and Quirrell. Snape was warning him about something which Iris couldn't understand. She found a room somewhere on that floor after the professors were distracted away by Filch. There was an odd-looking mirror in the room. When she looked into it, she was surprised to see her parents standing behind her in the mirror. She was so happy to see them, standing behind her, looking at her with love and pride. Soon, a voice broke her away from the trance she had fallen into. When she turned around, she was surprised to see the same boy who she had met in the train. He was not much of a talker and she didn't see him around much. He'd always greet her or nod at her with a neutral look on his face. Deciding that she had been staring at him long enough, she replied, "I was looking around and found this room." "Trouble sleeping?" he asked. Iris replied with a nod. Then suddenly, she got a lot more excited, grabbed his arm and yanked him towards the mirror. "Come. Look. Can you see that? I see my parents in the mirror." She didn't notice the sad frown on Edmund's face. He sighed impatiently replied, "Yes, I can see. But not your parents. Read carefully what's written beneath the mirror. It shows your heart's desire, which in your case must be your parents. From what I know about the mirror, it actually siphons away a person's magic till there is nothing left of them. Many have lost themselves to the mirror. I don't know why it's still here." Iris was shocked upon learning how dangerous the mirror was. Then she grew sad upon understanding that what she saw was not real. She got curious about how Edmund knew so much about the mirror and asked him. "My mother used to tell me stories about her school days. Once she told me about this mirror which she had stumbled upon and saw her mother who had died a few days before. She warned me about it." "Oh, you said used to, doesn't she tell you now?" "I lost my mother when I was 7. Silence followed after that. Iris felt guilty of reminding him of his mother. "I'm sorry." "It's alright. I'm sorry too for destroying your hopes," Edmund said as he gestured towards the mirror. They talked for an hour about anything they thought of when Edmund noticed someone approaching them. Although the person was out of sight, the amount of aura the person had unnerved him a bit. He knew that only one person could have that kind of aura and he had no wish to talk to the old coot. He quickly asked Iris to go back to her dorm as it was too late and a teacher may find them. As soon as they left the room, Dumbledore arrived to find it empty and frowned. He was sure that Iris Potter had been there but was nowhere to be seen. Sighing to himself, he left the room without taking a glance at the mirror. Edmund was in his room, thinking about the meeting he had with Iris Potter. It was interesting to say the least. They had not shared much of their life at their homes, but he knew her life with her relatives was anything but pleasant. He was smart enough not to ask much about it as this was the first time he ever talked to Iris properly. They mainly kept to their lives at school. Iris shared her doubts about the third-floor corridor that the old coot had warned the school about. While talking about the teachers, she told him about the blatant hatred that Snape showed towards her, which had her confused. She had never met the man and had never given him any reason for such hate towards her. Even Edmund found it odd. When Edmund had reminded her of the time, she thanked him with a bright smile. He felt heat coming off his face as he recalled that. It was a beautiful smile and she looked very cute. He quickly shook it off and focused on trying to sleep. Cute, huh? Well, all kids are cute, nothing special about her, right? Then the image of the weasel eating his food entered his mind. Gah. Kids are horrible. Now I'm fully awake. Damn you weasel. Rots. The school year came to an end and Edmund was sitting beside his group of friends on Ravenclaw table in the Great Hall. Rumor had been going around that Quirrell had left his job as their teacher, while some said he died a horrible death. Somehow, and no one knew why, well, maybe some did know, but Iris Potter was discovered quite injured the previous night. He didn't understand why, but he felt a bit concerned about her, but, on the other hand, he was brimming with anticipation because he finally confirmed that his next greatest enemy after the Vulpes family was indeed alive. It was time to up his training and work on finding balance between magic and chakra. Edmund was there when Iris confronted Quirrell in front of the mirror of her eyes. He had to try his best not to expose himself when Iris was getting hurt by Quirrell. His morals screamed at him to aid Iris, but he held himself back. He was not ready. After Voldemort's wraith had escaped, Edmund was about to appear and help Iris to the infirmary when he sensed the old coot approach the chamber. He waited, hinged as a fly on the wall as the old coot checked her pulse and heaved a sigh of relief. When Iris was taken away by the old man, Edmund quickly shunshined away. When he got back, he meditated to calm himself and went to sleep. Now, what bothered him was the fact that the dark acid was able to infiltrate a school full of students that was known to be the most secure place in Britain. He had possessed a person and was walking the very corridors other students used on daily basis. He could have easily done so much harm. One look at the old coot who was giving away points to Griffs for literally breaking every rule told Edmund that the man was least concerned of what grave error he had made due to lack security. As the feast came to an end, Edmund took a glance towards Iris and observed that as she talked, her smile never reached her eyes. She was dreading that fact that she had to spend her summer at her aunt's home. He felt a small amount of emotion well up in the pit of his stomach as he realized he too had to spend his summer with his mother's killer. He narrowed his eyes and unknowingly let out a low growl. The students around him were sending him uneasy looks as he frowned in distaste and stabbed at his food while eating. Rots. Edmund spent the summer after his first year evading his father with ninjutsu and working harder on gaining harmony between his chakra and magic. His progress was slow but was steady. He kept working on ninjutsu and learned many high-rank ones. Due to constant use of shadow clones, his chakra levels had shot up quite significantly. Edmund wanted to get stronger as much as possible. Things in his first year have been quite strange. Moldashirts had infiltrated to steal the Philosopher's Stone in the same year Iris had started her school. Even more strange was the fact that Dumbledore had brought an artifact highly sought after by many all over the world in a school. He had exposed the children to potential danger and the traps that were put in place were anything but difficult. Hell, 3 first years were able to easily get past them. Why would the Flammels give their priceless artifact to be guarded by Dumbledore at a school? Were they so naive to trust it with him? And why only now? They could have done it at any time before. He recalled overhearing Iris telling her friends about Hagrid taking something out of a vault at Gringotts. That must have been the stone. Why withdraw it right then? And in front of a student of all people. He still remembered the beaming smile on the old coot's face when he looked at the stone in the unconscious Iris's hand. Dumbledore was not a man he could trust. His trust further pummeled when he learnt that of all the wizards in the world, Lockhart was given the job to be their defense teacher. Edmund had been working on seals and was just a few steps away from recreating the Horatian. That technique would prove to be a lifesaver someday. Recently he had been working on barrier seals and was trying to find ways to mix wards and barriers. But for that, he had to find a balance between the two energies. It would take time, but he was sure he would be able to do it. His investments against the Vulpes family were yielding great results if the look on Alter Vulpes's face was any indication. The former death wanker had been distraught for quite a while. His vaults were constantly losing money due to constant expenditure and he had lost a lot of stocks in many businesses. Moreover, he couldn't find a way to vent his frustrations as he could never find his son anywhere so that he could curse him. Even the house elves were not responding to him. He had wanted to talk to his son about it, but for some reason, he was unable to do so. Unknown to him, Edmund actually made Alter free all the elves using Jinjutsu and had bonded with them in the name of Whirlpool family. Edmund closely and patiently watched as his murder of a father slowly descended into madness. Killing a madman would be so easy. He would wait and then strike at the opportune moment. Rots. It was September 1st of 1992 and Edmund was visiting the apothecary to buy some ingredients to practice for potions at school. While on his way, he noticed a lot of commotion at the bookshop. Edmund made his way to the shop and saw people flocking towards Lockhart as he flaunted his books to them. Edmund shook his head in disappointment. Wizards really acted like sheep and believed everything they read in books. Just when he was about to leave, he saw a bunch of redheads enter the shop, accompanied by none other than Iris Potter and the Granger girl with what looked like her parents. He didn't understand why, but something interesting always happened around the girl who lived. So, he decided to wait in the corner of the shop. Rots. Summer for Iris was not very pleasant. Uncle Vernon was cruel as ever and had locked up all her stuff in the cupboard. He didn't even allow her to have her wand with her. At least Hedwig was spared and was allowed to stay with her. Her uncle went even further by putting bars on her room's window. At first she thought her friends had abandoned her as they didn't contact her at all and never replied to her letters. But her worries were vanquished when a house elf Dobby appeared and confessed that he had been stealing the letters. She was a bit annoyed when he told her to not go to Hogwarts due to some danger. How could she even do that? And stay with her so-called family for the rest of the year? She shuddered to think of the consequences. Iris was really angry at the stupid elf when he levitated the cake and threw it on Vernon's guest. He tried to get her expelled. She even got a notice of warning from the Ministry of Magic for underage use of magic. When the Weasleys came to rescue her from her hell, she was eternally grateful. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were really kind to her. They even volunteered to go with her to Diagon Alley to buy her new books. Never had anyone shown so much kindness to her, and for the first time in her life, she got the feeling of belonging to a family. She wondered if her mother was just like Mrs. Weasley. It all felt too good to be true. On the day of their departure, she, along with the Weasleys, arrived at Diagon Alley and spotted Hermione with her parents. Together they went to the bookstore and saw a lot of people crowding up in the shop. The amount of people made her feel uneasy and she wanted nothing else but to get away as soon as she got her books. Her fears were realized when Lockhart grabbed her shoulder and pulled her in front of the crowd. She got very scared and stood stupefied as the reporters took pictures, and later she was handed a bunch of books. Relieved that she got away from Lockhart, Draco Malfoy appeared out of nowhere and further ruined her mood. When Mr. Weasley arrived and she felt the tension lift of her shoulders, Draco's father arrived and began sharing jibes with Mr. Weasley. It got so far that it appeared they were about to start a fight. Just then, a voice was heard which she recognized very well. She breathed a sigh of relief and for some reason, she felt the tension leave her altogether. "Are you two trying to start a fight here? It's highly unbecoming of a lord of a noble house and a ministry official to act like their children. Perhaps you two should go to Hogwarts in their place and learn some discretion. There are reporters present in this shop. Are you two so desperate to appear in the paper that you completely disregard the fact that you are lords of your families?" Although the voice didn't sound very pleasant for the two men. Edmund watched as Iris and the group entered the shop. He knew that Iris didn't like crowds from his observations at school. When Lockhart grabbed her shoulder and forced her beside him, Edmund had half the mind to put a kunai up his arse. He could clearly see the terror in Iris's eyes, and he did not like it. He liked when those vibrant and beautiful emerald eyes were calm, full of positive emotions, and he liked to see them smile. They were quite enchanting. But seeing fear in them made him angry. He quickly took out a kunai from a storage seal on his gloves and was about to go and ram the kunai into Lockhart's smiling face when the Git released Iris. Composing himself, he resealed the kunai and stood at his place, silently observing as the ferret Princess Malfoy opened his sower of a mouth and confronted the group. He thought the situation was handled when Elder Weasley came in to diffuse the tension, but he clenched his fist when the former death wanker and possible walking advertisement of Vila hair products came into the shop and confronted the Elder Weasley. He could see Iris tense up and back away from the angry adults. Before the situation got any worse, he decided to interfere. Deciding to take advantage of the presence of so many people around, he spoke in a cold and disapproving tone, "Are you two trying to start a fight here? It's highly unbecoming of a lord of a noble house and a ministry official to act like their children. Perhaps you two should go to Hogwarts in their place and learn some discretion. There are reporters present in this shop. Are you two so desperate to appear in the paper that you completely disregard the fact that you are lords of your families?" He knew the daddy ferret was not foolish enough to start throwing hexes in public. So he continued. "And learn to put a lid on that sower you call your mouth, Princess Malfoy. Sometimes I wonder what the Sorting Hat was thinking when it placed you of all people in Slytherin. Were the effects of the Imperius your father was placed under by the Dark Lord so much that his offspring turned out to be a complete dork?" Silence followed after he finished. The Malfoys were brimming with rage, while the Elder Weasley looked embarrassed. Edmund himself just stood there, next to Iris, and briefly greeted her with a nod. "Hi," was she could say. "Why you insolent whelp. When your father hears this," but Daddy Ferret was interrupted by a laughing fit from Edmund. "Oh gasp, this is priceless gasp, now I know where Princess Malfoy here got that from. Is that a Malfoy catchphrase, oh Merlin?" Gasped my sides. Soon, he was joined by those around him. Not wanting to be further embarrassed by a 12-year-old, the Malfoys trotted out of the shop after Daddy Ferret returned a book he had taken from Little Weaselette's cauldron. After Edmund sobered up, he saw the gluttonous weasel sneer at him. He raised an eyebrow, smirked and turned to Iris, "Good to see you here, Potter." What were you doing to get your clothes so dirty?" In response, Iris just blushed with embarrassment. "Hey, leave her alone, Vulpus. "We don't want to hear from your dirty mouth," the weasel squeaked with a face as red as his hair. "Anyway, Skurgify. There, all cleaned up. I suggest you learn the spell Potter. It's quite useful. See ya on the train," he said, patted on her shoulder and went away. "Yeah, bye. Brats." Edmund rushed towards the platform after he lost track of time buying stuff and leisurely throwing galleons away that belonged to his father. When he reached the gateway, he saw the weasel and Iris standing there with their stuff all around on the ground. He approached them and asked, "What are you standing here for? The express leaves in 5 minutes." Before the weasel could retort pitifully, Iris responded in an almost panicked manner, "We tried to get to the other side, but the gateway seems to have closed." Nearing the pillar, he examined it and felt the magic. It was different than normal wizard magic, almost elven. "It's elven magic blocking the gateway. Toffee," he said, softly calling a house elf that had bonded with him as he cast a wide area notice me not charm. Immediately, a house elf in quite elegant clothes appeared with a crack, startling the other two. "Master Eddie be calling Toffee." The elf squeaked excitedly. Smiling slightly, Edmund spoke, "I need you to remove the barrier on the gateway and rearrange the stuff of these two back in their trolleys." "Yes, Master Eddie." Toffee snapped his fingers and quickly did what he was asked for. "Good work, Toffee, you may go now." The elf beamed for being praised and went away with a crack. Edmund nodded towards them and went through the gateway without saying anything. The two just stood there gaping at him. Breaking out of their stupor, they quickly followed him. Brats. The second year was very similar to first year. Charms, potions and transfiguration were always interesting. Dada was just like the previous year, complete waste of time. Lockhart was a huge disappointment. Edmund's view of the peacock couldn't be any lower. History of magic was the usual, he studied seals and runes, along with reading his ancestors' notes on chakra and magic harmony in that class. Soon, it was Halloween again and the students were in the Great Hall enjoying the feast. Edmund noticed that while everyone was enjoying themselves, a certain green-eyed girl was slowly eating her food with a sad look on her face. He really felt sad for her. The girl never knew what parental love was like and her relatives weren't much of a consolation. As the feast came to an end, the students departed to their destinations. Knowing that Iris had a detention with the peacock, Edmund had created a clone to keep an eye on her, just in case the git tried something funny. Not that he really cared, of course. The memory of him and Iris standing before the mirror of her eyes flashed in his mind. Shaking off a blush threatening to appear on his face, he refocused on the book he was reading in the library. Suddenly, he heard a hissing sound. At first he ignored it, but when he heard it again, he got up and tried to follow the sound. Reaching the second floor, he noticed that the whole floor was flooded and a group of students were standing beside the wall. A metallic smell assaulted his nose. It was that of blood. He quickly approached the group and saw none other than Mrs. Norris being hung by her tail on the wall. The cat was not moving at all, but by the slow laboring movements, he knew the cat was alive. He then noticed the writing on the wall, in blood. Just then, he heard the ferret open his mouth and spew nonsense, "The Chamber of Secrets has opened again. Beware mudbloods, Slytherin's monster will finally rid our world of you." "Ah, Princess Malfoy, what did I tell you about putting a lid over your mouth? Every time you open it you just spew sewage waste and dirty our poor ears," Edmund reprimanded the ferret, not the least bit happy with what the boy just said. The rest of the students laughed as the ferret turned red with embarrassment and anger. Argus Filch came over to the group and began accusing Iris of all people. "But I didn't do it. I just saw her hanging on the wall while returning from my detention with Professor Lockhart. You can ask him." Iris replied, offended that she was being accused of doing such a thing. But Filch didn't listen. Iris got scared and tried to back away from him when he reached out to grab her collar. Edmund's anger erupted and he grabbed his wrist in a crushing grip. Filch screamed in pain and desperately tried to free himself, but Edmund didn't even budge. "You old fool, who do you think you are to try and grab a girl's collar? Try that again and I'll rip your arms out," he growled, eyes zeroed upon the now cowering and completely terrified Filch. Edmund's eyes were glowing with power and he subconsciously let go of some of his aura. "What is going on here?" McGonagall said as she neared the group, her lips thinned into a firm line. "Mr. Vulpes, 30 points from Ravenclaw for assault on a school employee. Well, tell you employee to refrain from trying to grab a student's collar. It's incredibly rude and can be dubbed as physical assault. This piece of shit just accused Potter for killing his damn cat. If he had enough brains he'd notice that the cat is still breathing," Edmund snarled. "Language, Mr. Vulpes. That'll be 20 more points from Ravenclaw. The hell with your points, lady, I am trying to defend a student here. Someone has written a whole sentence in blood on the wall with a cat hanging from its tail and the first thing you do is take stupid points away. Are you going senile or are you just plain stupid?" The students around him gasped in shock as McGonagall's expression turned stormy. "Mr. Vulpes. Never have I been treated with such disrespect. 2 months detention for you with Hagrid while you take care of magical creatures with him. Perhaps extensive manual labor would teach you some manners. Edmund just stood there with a deadpan expression. Of all the things to punish him with, manual labor would be the easiest punishment. He was a boy who could punch a boulder to pieces. Manual labor was a leisure activity. Dumbledore took the silence between them as an opportunity to pipe in, "Mr. Vulpes, you should not disrespect your betters. I hope this won't happen again. Now, Argus, your cat has been petrified by the looks of it. It's perhaps a prank by a 6th or a 7th year student. Young Iris is a 2nd year student. She's innocent until proven guilty." Innocent until proven guilty. The hell are you playing at, you old shit? Edmund narrowed his eyes at the old coot. That sentence had a hidden meaning in it. He just declared that Iris was a suspect, which Edmund clearly knew she wasn't. The memory from his clone had proved it. He looked at Iris and noticed that she was on the verge of tears. The students around them were staring at her with accusing looks, clearly making their own assumptions. Edmund was about to lash out at them when the students were ordered to go to their dorms. Edmund was trying very hard not to try and shove a Rasengan down Dumbledore's throat. He dismissed the situation as a prank, which clearly was not one. The Chamber of Secrets, he needed to do some research on that. The only thing he knew was that the chamber was rumored to be open 50 years ago. His maternal grandfather liked to keep a journal, who used to go to Hogwarts at that time. Perhaps he had recorded something in it. Reaching into his multi-compartment trunk, he searched for the journal in the library section, where he usually kept most of the jutsu scrolls and his books from the Whirlpool vault. After rummaging for a minute he found the diary. Quickly he scanned the journal and found what he was looking for. Entry number 387. Something very strange and unsettling has been happening recently. Students are being petrified all over the school. Even more strange is that all the victims are Muggleborns. A girl from Ravenclaw, Myrtle Warren, was found dead in the second-floor girls' washroom yesterday. Not a single wound was found on her body or any spell damage was seen. Even any traces of the Avada Kedavra were absent. It is being rumored that Slytherin's fabled Chamber of Secrets was opened by a student, Rubeus Hagrid, a 3rd year, and the monster that stayed in the chamber for 1,000 years has killed Myrtle. But how? Anyway, apparently Tom Marvolo Riddle, a 6th-year Slytherin, was able to confront him, and now Hagrid has been expelled and his wand snapped. Being a minor, he'll probably be spared of being sent to Azkaban. Riddle has quite a personality and imposes the image of an ideal student and is considered to be the brightest of his batch. A Muggle-born Slytherin who possesses the ability to talk to snakes. He lives in an orphanage in Muggle London. He's been awarded a special reward for services to the school as he apprehended the culprit that caused a student's death. The whole situation is so bizarre. The only animal who could have killed anyone without leaving any mark on the victim is perhaps a basilisk. But the snake is generally way too big to freely roam around and go killing people. And its gaze does not petrify its victims, it kills them. It could be a gorgon, but I am not certain. Everyone is pretty scared. Maybe with the culprit being caught, the attacks will stop. No one has been able to find the chamber though. Nobody knows what really is happening, but I hope it all stops soon. Edmund reread the entry again. After confirming he didn't miss anything, he returned the journal back in the trunk. He rubbed his forehead and felt a headache coming. If it all was true, if the chamber did exist and had been opened again, it could spell disaster for everyone. And this time, there was no Riddle to save the day. First a fucking wraith of that megalomaniac Dark Acid and now this blasted chamber, what next, a post-owl rebellion? Malfoy promoting Muggleborn rights? Or the weasel actually having brain? Fuck it, I'll just sleep and think about it tomorrow. Rots. The next victim was a first-year boy named Colin Creevy who belonged to Gryffindor. The day started with a Quidditch game between Gryffindor and Slytherin. As usual, Iris was chazzing the snitch and was struggling as Princess Malfoy was trying his best to push her off her broom. Suddenly, a bludger went rogue and specifically targeted Iris. Iris was able to get the snitch but fell from her broom, holding a broken arm. The bludger didn't stop even as the game ended, and Granger finally had to destroy it with a bombarda to stop it. When Iris was about to be escorted away to the infirmary, the Peacock Lockhart decided to mess things up and vanished the bones of her broken arm. Edmund still couldn't understand why the Ponce was still allowed near students. Later that night, Edmund was feeling uneasy and couldn't sleep. So he went for a walk on the walls after curfew. He ended up walking inside the infirmary and saw Iris sleeping on the bed. He was contemplating whether to go near her or not when a house elf appeared near her bed, thus waking her up. "Dobby? What are you doing here?" Iris whispered, looking surprised by the elf's sudden appearance. "Mistress Iris Potter should not have been coming to Hogwarts," Dobby replied firmly. He continued, "That's why Dobby tried to force Mistress using his bludger." Edmund narrowed his eyes at the elf. This little thing of flesh and bones wanted Iris away from this school. But why? "Your bludger," Iris growled. So you were trying to kill me. Alarmed, the elf quickly replied, not kill mistress, never kill. Dobby be never doing such a thing to the great witch Iris Potter. Dobby just wanted mistress to be safe. And how does attacking me with a bludger implies keeping me safe? And why are you trying to protect me? From whom? Is this about the Chamber of Secrets? Iris asked, thinking furiously. The elf looked horrified upon hearing about the chamber. It began punishing itself when Iris asked about the chamber again. Finally, the elf claimed down when they heard footsteps coming towards the infirmary. Edmund noted that they sounded frantic. The elf took the opportunity to apparate away. Cursing under her breath, Iris quickly got back to her bed and pretended to be asleep. Whoopi Pomfrey, McGonagall and Dumbledore were carrying a boy who looked around 11 or 12 years old. They placed him on a bed beside Iris. Dumbledore pried a camera off the boy's hands and opened it, only to find that camera had been completely burnt on the inside. What does this mean, Albus? McGonagall asked, the fear easily noticeable in her voice. It means that the Chamber of Secrets has indeed been opened, he replied patiently. But who, Albus? Who could have done it? The question is not who, Minerva, the question is, how? He said while looking at the sleeping form of Iris. The other looked at her with wide eyes. Edmund was furious. What the fuck, you piece of shit? What do you think you are implying? Is this son of a bitch accusing Iris? What kind of sick person is he? On one side he comforts Iris and shows a grandfatherly persona, while on the other hand he accuses her. Clearly, he does not shit light out of his arse. There's much more to him that he lets on. Rots. Edmund was contemplating if he should actually kill Lockhart or not. The peacock was masquerading in posh dueling clothes and showing off what little spells his stupid brain could actually remember. Well, the greasy bat showing him how much Mother Earth loves him was a bit satisfactory. But nothing beats the joy of a fist and a broken nose. He watched as the ferret and Iris were called to participate in the duel. Iris was good, she packed quite a lot of power for a 12-year-old. Suddenly, Princess Malfoy decided to summon a snake. To make it worse, Lockhart used a very inconvenient spell to further anger the snake. Then, something happened that made everyone gasp in surprise. Iris hissed, like a snake at the serpent. The snake looked at a Hufflepuff boy whose name Edmund didn't bother to remember. The snake looked at Iris and its possible victim when Snape decided that it was enough and destroyed the snake. Students all around looked at her with fear and backed away. Poor Iris looked quite confused and glanced back and forth. The students were then dismissed and her friends decided to drag her away. Edmund had only one thought in his mind, well, that complicates the matter to a whole new level. Rots. Everything was going as normal as it should have for Iris. But everything went downhill on Halloween. When Filch's cat was found petrified, he had accused her out of all the students that were standing there. She had sighed in relief when Edmund had come to her rescue and stopped Filch from grabbing hold of her collar. She found Edmund to be quite amusing. He was snarky and always had something to say about someone whenever they behaved in a manner he disapproved. He didn't even care what would happen when he openly insulted Professor McGonagall and called her an idiot. All to defend her. She felt warmth erupt within her when he did that. Professor Dumbledore had called her innocent until proven guilty. Which meant that she was a suspect. Things seemed to have calmed down when no other incident took place. When the bludger had turned rogue and targeted her during the game, she went all out with defiance. When Professor Lockhart vanished the bones in her broken arm, she got really scared. But it was for naught as Madame Pomfrey told her about Skelgru potion. It tasted horrible, and the pain caused by regrowing bones was almost unbearable. After Dobby vanished away with a snap of his fingers, Iris had rushed back to her bed. Another student had been petrified. It was Colin Creevey, the first year who had been pestering her for photographs. During the dueling club practice, Malfoy had summoned a snake who seemed quite angry for being summoned. Iris tried to order it to not attack anyone when Snape destroyed a snake. She knew she could talk to snakes and thought it was quite a normal thing among wizards. Turned out that only Salazar Slytherin and Voldemort were known to have the ability of parselting, and now her. The next day, Justin Finch Fletchley, the Hufflepuff boy who was being stalked by the snake summoned by Malfoy the previous day, was found petrified along with the ghost Sir Nicholas. It was Iris who had found them and was dubbed to be caught in the act. The whole school seemed to have turned against Iris after that. Even her friends, the Weasel and Granger, were trying their best to distance themselves away from her. Although they had helped her with Polyjuice Potion to spy on Malfoy, they were really not proving to be of much help. She was being openly bullied and hexed behind her back. The teachers were not helping either as they had turned a blind eye to her. Finally, it was too much for her to handle and she broke down. Running out of the Great Hall after dinner, she exited the castle and sat beside the Black Lake, resting her back against a huge rock and cried openly. After what felt half an hour, she heard a noise of someone coming towards where she was sitting. Quickly wiping her tears from her red puffy eyes, she washed her face with the lake's water. As soon as she was done, the person began speaking. "Potter, what are you doing out here? It's dangerous to be out of the castle at night. Come on, let's go back." Iris instantly recognized the voice. It was Edmund Vulpes. He was the only one who was yet to try anything against her. Usually his voice was full of sarcasm and blunt ruthless insults, but whenever he talked to her, he sounded somewhat warm, but still a bit rough. This time though, he sounded concerned for her safety. She couldn't understand why. There was no curiously in his voice like that in Professor Dumbledore, indifference as in McGonagall's or dismissive like Hagrid. It was just genuine concern. Hope building up in her fragile heart, she shook her head and spoke as her voice quivered with emotion. I don't want to. Want to talk about it?" Edmund asked as he slowly walked closer. When she didn't reply, he sighed and sat down next to her. Even in the dim light of the moon and the stars, he could clearly see her red eyes and tear stains on her flushed cheeks. His heart pained for her. It was so cruel. Iris never found happiness anywhere, be it at her Muggle home or at Hogwarts. After a few minutes of silence, Iris began, "I always thought that I'll find my true home in the wizarding world. At my aunt's house, I am an outsider, a freak, a burden. I thought that being away from my relatives would help me find happiness. But now, I am being shunned away by my own friends. Is being able to talk to Snake such a bad thing? I guess I really am just a freak. Whoever said that is a prat. You're Iris Potter, a 12-year-old witch and a brilliant one at that. You are the youngest seeker of the century. No one can deny that. I agree that everyone at school is being rather cruel, but they are scared. 2 students have been petrified and no one knows who did it. You are just a scapegoat. Since you are an orphan, no one will fear any kind of opposition from your family. What am I supposed to do then?" She sounded desperate. Edmund smiled softly and placed his hand on her head, and a blush crept on her face when she saw him smile. "Don't give in. I know you hold back in your classes, aha. Don't try to deny it," he softly reprimanded when she was about to protest. "I have been observing and you do slip up sometimes. If you are afraid that your friends will leave you if you show that you are better than them, then they really aren't friends. Use this as an opportunity to learn to protect yourself. And being able to talk to snakes doesn't make you evil. Do you know what the worldwide symbol for medicine is?" Iris simply shook her head, but seemed interested. The Muggle's symbol for medicine is the caduceus, 2 serpents going up around a staff with wings for a reason. I think you should try and learn parcel magic, and using it would help others accept your ability. Parcel magic was widely known for its healing effects, among other things. Of course, Voldemort ignored the healing part of it as he only wanted to hurt people. Iris was slightly surprised that he used a Dark Lord's name so openly. "You are not afraid to say his name?" Edmund chuckled and replied, "No, why should I? It's not like he's alive, is he?" Inwardly, he cursed himself for his slip. His abilities needed to stay hidden. He sighed in relief when he saw Iris accept his reasoning. "So, parcel magic is not bad. I can learn it and use it to heal people." There was hope in her voice, and Edmund had no intention to ruin it. He got up and replied, "Exactly. Find more about it. I'd suggest going to the library and learn what you can about its history. You can search the Diagon Alley to find some books on it. Anyway, I guess it's time for curfew. Better get back to our dorms." Iris smiled and shook her head. "I'll stay for a few more minutes." Edmund just nodded. When he was about to leave, Iris quickly reached out for his hand and grabbed it. He looked curiously at her when she gave him a tight hug, kissed him on the cheek and thanked him. Edmund dumbly nodded and rushed back to the castle with bright red cheeks, not noticing the furiously blushing Iris he left behind. Edmund found it really hard to focus for the next few days. The memory of Iris kissing his cheek was still fresh in his mind, and he had no plans of forgetting it anytime soon. Oh, he knew what was happening to him. But he was insistent on denying it. He was just 12 after all. There was no need to rush. "Get a hold of yourself, Ed, there are more important things you need to focus on. All that can wait. I need to find where the chamber is." His expression hardened and his eyes were focused. Creating a bunch of shadow clones, he asked them to search every nook and cranny of the castle to find the entrance for the chamber. After a half-hour meditation session, he got into his bed and went to sleep, hoping no more students were targeted that night. Rots. Edmund was angry, not at Dumbledore or Lockhart or the rest of the student body. No, he was angry at himself. Talking to Myrtle was eye-opening. It was so simple, just ask the victim how she died. The taps on the basins had snakes engraved on them. He had searched everywhere to find a way open a doorway, but nothing happened. The abuse Iris suffered had diminished to almost negligible ever since Granger was found petrified in the library, with a mirror in her hand. It felt so ridiculous at first, why would anyone take a handheld mirror to library? Then realization hit him. Every victim had one thing in the common. They had something reflective around them, or they looking through something else when they got petrified. Filch's cat had water on the floor. Creevy was looking through his camera, the Hufflepuff boy was looking through Sir Nicholas, and Granger had a mirror. They never looked at the attacker directly. A Gorgon's magic did not work that way. It could only be a basilisk. And so, he was sitting on the floor, glaring at the taps, think what else he could do to open the damn entrance. He could just punch the damn thing, but that would be very risky. Any curious student could fall into it and die while he was in the chamber. If only he was a Parselmouth. He couldn't in good conscience involve Iris in this. The girl had enough shit to deal with on her own. Just then, two figures came running towards the washroom. Edmund quickly hinged into a rat and ran away to hide behind a stall, after quickly asking Myrtle to remain quiet about him. To his utter surprise and worry, it was Iris herself, accompanied by the Weasel and Lockhart. She asked Myrtle about the night she died. Iris then looked at the taps that Myrtle had pointed out and traced the snake engravings on them. Then, she hissed. The entrance to the chamber opened and they threw Lockhart down the slide. If he could, Edmund would have chuckled in amusement. Then they followed him down to the chamber. Quickly, Edmund jumped behind them as the entrance began to close. Down in the chamber, he marveled at the 60-feet-long snakeskin that was shed by the basilisk. He sped ahead of the three and reached a door with snakes radiating out of it. Edmund sighed in defeat. Only Iris could open it. He waited for Iris when he heard the cave collapse. When he was about to rush in the direction of the cave, he saw Iris running towards him. He moved out of the way and let Iris open the door for him. They entered the main chamber. It had numerous statues of snakes and a large face with flowing beard and hair carved into the wall opposite to the entrance. It was probably Salazar Slytherin himself. Then, he saw a young girl laying still on the floor, next to Iris, who was trying to wake the girl up. To his surprise and annoyance, it was Minerva Bloody Weasley. The girl had been a complete pain in the rear. She acted so strange for the whole year and fangirled over Iris for most of her time at the castle. Suddenly, a teenager in school clothes appeared out of thin air and picked up Iris's wand that was lying beside her. Edmund inwardly frowned. Who was this guy? He listened intently as Iris and the boy, who was now recognized as Tom by her. His eyes widened in surprise when he revealed to be the one behind all attacks. But when he revealed who he actually was, Edmund was shocked to his core. Ton Marvolo Riddle was Voldemort. Suddenly, Edmund fought the urge to point at all the pureblood supremacists and laugh his lungs out. The fools were following a Muggleborn or a possible half-blood preaching pureblood rites and killing Muggleborns, a delusional man who believed he was the heir of Slytherin. There were thousands of Parselmouths all over the world. Only England, and by extension, Europe was the region where they either died out, were killed or stayed hidden due to the stigmas. The phoenix suddenly came flying towards them with the sorting hat in its claws. Suddenly, Tommy hissed at the giant face, and its mouth opened. Edmund heard a slithering sound coming from the open mouth. His eyes widened when he realized what was coming. Just as the snake's head emerged from the mouth, Edmund hid behind a wall, dispelled the hinge, unsealed a pair of kunai, charged them with lightning chakra, and with all his might, threw them, aimed at the serpent's eyes. When the kunai struck, the snake half hissed and half roared in pain as its eyes were destroyed by piercing lightning chakra. No. Who did this? Tommy Boy screamed. Taking a few deep breaths, he calmed down and said, "Doesn't matter, my basilisk can still smell you. Run Iris, run for your life, but you will die tonight." Iris ran away from the basilisk, but it followed her, listening to the sound of her footsteps. Edmund hurriedly coursed the walls when he saw Iris throw a stone away in another direction to distract the snake. Successful in her attempt, she hurried back to the main hall, again resuming her futile attempts to wake the stupid girl up. Tommy hissed again and the snake emerged from the water surrounding them. Edmund began charging his chakra and released his resistant seals at once. Even if he would be exposed, he would not risk Iris getting hurt badly or worse, end up dead. Edmund never saw a sword appearing out of the sorting hat and was surprised to see Iris draw it from beside her. She swung it at the snake desperately trying to keep some distance. Backing away, she climbed Slytherin's face as the snake rammed into the stone. He snarled and quickly began making hand seals. Horse, dog, bird, ox, snake. Odin. Desecaric. The massive wingless dragon emerged from his side and sped towards the unaware snake. Tommy saw the construct of earth and stone and tried to warn his snake to move out of the way, but was too late. The earth dragon rammed into the snake's spine and shattered it. The basilisk shrieked in pain as its body began to bend at odd sharp angles. Iris took the opportunity to strike and shoved her sword through the snake's upper jaw and its brain. The snake wailed for a few moments and finally dropped dead. Tommy wailed, "Who did this? I command you to show yourself." He was livid. Not only was his weapon dead, but someone had helped his enemy from the shadows with strange but powerful magic. Iris stumbled back near the Weaselette. Edmund's eyes went wide in horror when he saw a basilisk fang lodged in her arm. Tommy boasted that Iris was as good as dead due to the venom of the basilisk. Iris looked up at him in defiance. She pulled the fang out and struck a diary next to her with it. Tommy screamed as a magical hole appeared in his chest. Iris stabbed the diary again and again until Tommy was left in nothing but tiny specks of light. The weaselette began to stir when Edmund sent a silent stunner at her. Iris looked around in panic and fear but relaxed when Edmund emerged from hiding. "How did you get here, Ed Vulpes?" she said hesitantly, not knowing how to address him. "I followed you down that slide and went ahead while you were marveling at the snakeskin. Sorry I stunned her, I didn't want anyone to see me here." He looked at the puncture wound on her arm and lowered his eyes with immense regret. He was feeling miserable. "I'm sorry for that. I could have provided better help, but I was afraid of catching you with a deadly jutsu in the crossfire. Great load of good that did." He didn't say the last part out loud. When she was about to ask him about the strange thunder and earth spells, the phoenix came closer to her and shed its tears on her wound. Miraculously, the wound healed as her face regained a rosy tinge. Iris gasped, "Of course. Phoenix tears are known to heal any and all kinds of ailments and wounds. Thanks, Fox." Edmund breathed heavily in relief. If Iris had died of his stupidity, he would have never forgiven himself. Probably end up killing himself and taking the Vulpes family with him to hell. The phoenix thrilled. Iris giggled and looked at Edmund. "Thanks for tonight, Edmund." "I don't know what you're talking about." He shifted nervously on his feet as tried to dismiss it. Iris just smiled and looked at him knowingly and shook her head. Are you alright? I know you must be happy that you are alive and saved the little Weasley, but when it sinks in." Edmund trailed off. "I know," she replied quietly. "It will be hard to get around it for a few days. I was really scared and knowing I could have died today many times over. It will take time, but I'll be fine." She stopped for a moment and said, "Let's go." "No, you can leave without me. I'll be on my own. Just don't tell anyone I was here." "Are you sure? What if Ron sees you?" If only he could think of something other than food, he mumbled, but Iris couldn't hear him. "I'll be fine. He won't see me." He nodded. After that he went away as she looked at his disappearing back for a moment and focused on enervating the weaselette. Rots. All the affected students were healed by potions made from mature mandrakes. Dumbledore had returned after he was forced away from the school by the death wanker Malfoy and the minister. No one knew what caused the petrifications. As always, the old coot had put everything under the rug. The weaselette got away without any repercussions. But the best part, Malfoy Sr. got his rear handed to him by his former house elf, Dobby, the elf who had tried everything to keep Iris safe, at least what he thought was safe. What angered Edmund was that Malfoy Sr. was responsible for all of it. But he couldn't do anything about it as there was no subtle proof. The year came to an end, and the old coot told half and twisted truths about the petrifications. Like always, his word was accepted without any complaints. The Griffs won the House Cup again, courtesy to Iris for her services for the school. Some had seen Gryffindor's sword in the headmaster's office, and Iris was the one to find it and return it to the school. It was time for the students to return to their homes. Edmund, as usual, was ready to spend another summer training hard for any upcoming surprises the next year. Little did he know, a surprise was waiting for him at his home, a very unpleasant and eventful one. As he entered the lobby of his manor through the fireplace, Edmund felt something off about the place. His instincts were screaming at him to release his resistant seals and be prepared for a battle. He felt someone's presence behind him and swiftly turned around. His eyes widened as he saw his father standing next to a man in his early 60s. He was a head taller than his father and had a more sinister and dangerous aura around him. Of course he would. The old man was Edmund's grandfather. The mastermind behind the destruction of Whirlpool family. Aldrich Vulpes was a ruthless and a sinister man who strived for power much like his dork Lord Moldy. Unlike Alter, Aldrich had a much saner mind. The man's presence was enough to put Edmund on the edge. Aldrich looked at his grandson, critically analyzing him. After a few tense moments, he began, "Edmund, it's been such a long time since I saw you. Won't you greet your grandfather?" Edmund's mind was going into an overdrive. What the fuck is this asshole doing here? The whole Europe is after him. I have to be careful. If he sees something wrong with the Vulpes vaults, he'll suspect me and will try everything to force the truth out of me. The fucker is a good Aculaments. Normal Genjutsu won't really work on him. Shit. Now what do I do? Outwardly, Edmund showed no emotion and replied, "Hello, grandfather." No matter how much he tried, he couldn't bring to put a smile on his face. The man in front of him was someone who didn't deserve any respect or love from him. Aldrich snarled, "I guess I'll have to teach you some manners while I stay here, boy. Your mother was just like you, a disrespectful bitch." He looked at Alter and continued in a harsh tone, "You didn't raise him well, did you? He's too much like the Whirlpools. Good thing we got rid of them. You did well on killing your whore of a wife." Alter happily nodded, pleased that his father liked his actions so far. Edmund was seething inside. The man insulted his dead mother right in front of him. Unable to control his anger anymore, he lashed out, "How dare you? How dare you insult my mother? She was the kindest and the most lovable woman. I consider myself blessed to be given birth by her. She was there for me and loved me till her last breath, and I won't let you talk shit about her." Edmund's magic and chakra flared. He was engulfed by a blue aura and the objects in the living room were shaking badly. Alter was about to reprimand Edmund harshly when Aldrich whipped his wand out of its holster and snarled, "You dare talk back to me, boy. Crucio." The spell struck Edmund right in the chest. The pain was much worse than when Alter used the curse on him. He felt as if he was being flayed from every part of his body, as if every bone in his body was being crushed and every organ being burned slowly. Edmund clenched his jaw hard, not wanting to give the satisfaction of him screaming in pain to his attacker. He fell over and bent into a fetal position as he tried to endure the pain, grunting and breathing heavily. Aldrich gave a sinister cackle, "Able to endure it, are you? Truly astounding. That wench, your mother, screamed so delightfully whenever my son used to discipline her. Ah. I truly miss those days, watching her writhe in pain and listening to her screams. You ungrateful waste of space, how dare you mouth off Lord Malfoy in public. I'll teach you how to respect your betters." He ended the spell and spoke to Alter, "Go and look for what is causing our vaults to lose so much money so quickly. I'll deal with this little shit." "Yes, father." Alter walked up to his son, bent down next to his trembling body and whispered, "I don't know how you escaped from me for the past 2 years, but we've got you now. Father will make sure to compensate for 2 years of punishment. I hope you live through it because when he's finished with you, it'll be my turn and I'll be even more vicious." Edmund looked up at his father. No, the man didn't deserve the title. He looked at Alter with utter fury and unadulterated hate. If he could move right then, he would rip and tear the man apart. Seeing Alter smirk, Edmund spat at him. Alter's face was priceless for a second. Then he shouted, "You insufferable brat, you'll pay for such an insult." Alter kicked him in the ribs and in the back multiple times. When he got tired he kicked Edmund in the face one last time, walked towards the fireplace and flew away. "Ready for the second round, you son of a whore," Aldrich snarled. Edmund in the meantime was bidding time for his nerves to get more stable. Alter's kick didn't hurt at all. Edmund had channeled as much chakra as he could to stimulate his cells and reverse as much damage done by the torture curse as he could. He got up as his legs trembled. Making a ram seal, he whispered, "Release." The seals on his body flared and moved. The constant resistance to his muscles and chakra vanished and he exhaled. "Heyman. Kai." The air around him began moving in violent currents. "What is this? What are you doing, boy?" "Hickman. Kai." The aura around Edmund turned green and his skin began to get flushed with blood. His muscles were being stimulated to unimaginable levels as he felt his strength increase by multiple times. "Sayman. Kai." The very floor of the living room began to tremble as his power grew. Windows shattered and cracks appeared on the floor beneath him. He felt the strain in his bones as the marrow in them produced cells as a very high rate and his pulse reached beyond the safety levels. Aldrich watched on in astonishment and was a bit unnerved at the display of Edmund's power. He took a step back and shouted, "What is all this? I ask you again, what are you doing?" Edmund stopped, looked up in Aldrich's eyes and smirked, "Preparing to give you a very painful death." Aldrich laughed, "Who do you think you are? I was one of the chief enforcers of the Dark Lord. I killed many so-called master wizards in battle, like your grandfather, Dominic Whirlpool. What can a pipsqueak?" He never said the word fully as air was forced out of his lungs. His eyes grew impossibly wide as they bulged out of their sockets and blood rushed out his mouth as Edmund rammed a knee in his stomach. Alter was sent through a wall and into the armory. Aldrich coughed blood as he felt pain all over his back and in his ribs. He was sure that quite a few of them were broken by now. Pulling out a vial of draught of endurance, a numbing draught and a draught of rage, he quickly downed them in a gulp. Edmund took his time as he approached the man on the ground. Aldrich grunted in pain and got up. Pointing his wand at Edmund he snarled, "I was going to torture you slowly and break you, but now I'll just kill you." Avada Kedavra. Edmund easily dodged the curse by just bending his head to his side and kept walking. "Why don't you just die, you piece of shit? Reducto bombardas fractionis incarcerus Avada Kedavra." Aldrich kept throwing all kinds of curses at Edmund, but he was easily able to evade all of them. Aldrich was by no means a pushover. He was known as a master dueler and had killed many prominent members of the wizarding world in the First War. A man known to rival Mad Eye Moody, Aldrich had a lot of power to back it all up. Edmund began feeling the strain of opening 3 gates. This was the first time he had opened 3 and he was not prepared for it. The effects of the Cruciaticus were still there and the technique was not at all helpful. He dodged a couple of hexes and unforgivables and got closer to Aldrich. Delivering a powerful kick on the man's wand arm, he crushed the bones of his arm and sent him flying across the room. He cancelled the technique and his skin returned to its normal color. Placing his hands on the ground, he yelled, "Doten. Doryusu." Spikes of earth appeared from all over the ground and impaled Aldrich's knees. The effects of the potions he had taken were beginning to wear off. He violently thrashed on the ground as his kneecaps were pushed out of his skin followed by the spike. Putting his wand away, Edmund made a few hand seals and yelled, "Raiden. Denji Setsujin." Large amount of bolts of blue electricity erupted from his hands and latched onto Aldrich's prone body. Aldrich screamed as he felt his flesh burn. The pain he felt as electricity violently burned away his flesh and blood was unbearable. As the jutsu ended, Aldrich was left twitching on the ground, barely breathing. "I told you, didn't I? I'll make your death very painful," Edmund growled, panting, feeling the effects of the gates. Aldrich turned his head towards Edmund with great effort. "I won't do that. I am your grandfather. Your blood. That is a curse I'll have to live with forever. It's tainted with your darkness. Vulpes was a family that branched out from Whirlpool 6 centuries ago. Your ancestor was jealous of his own brother and betrayed him. You got consumed by that same darkness and destroyed them. Now I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. But don't you worry, after I kill your son, I'll disown myself and by magic, this cursed family will be extinct and the world will be rid of its taint." Aldrich's eyes grew large in horror as he mumbled coherently. Edmund walked over and sat down next to him. He closed the distance between them and then whispered in Aldrich's ear, "Let's begin, shall we?" Reaching out, Edmund grabbed Aldrich's jaw and snapped it. The older man screamed as tears and snot rushed out of his eyes and nose. "Now you won't be able to bite your own tongue and give yourself an easy death." He made a gesture with his hand as Aldrich groaned. Bright yellow orb appeared between his fingers and he put his fingers in the man's open mouth as if feeding him the yellow orb. "Do you feel it? The warmth as the orb goes down your throat. It has reached your chest, right? Slowly reaching where your heart is. Now it's slowly latching onto your heart. You feel it, right? Feels like your heart has been thrown into boiling water. Let it burn." Aldrich kept crying and screaming as he felt his heart actually boil. To his utter horror, he felt the heat spread from his heart to his lungs. Feel it in your lungs. Feel the heat as it fills them, burning them from the inside as your breath becomes erratic and blood takes the heat all over your body. Feel it as it burns your innards, feel it reach your bones and burn away the marrow. Feel it under your skin, crawling and expanding it. You must be feeling bloated. Aldrich's stomach, his chest, his face, his arms and legs began to swell up. Do you feel your skin tearing apart? Feel your organs crying to expel themselves out of you. Aldrich convulsed and screamed, his voice already hoarse. His skin began to tear from the inside and blood began to pour out of the torn areas. His convulsions became violent as his guts began to spill out of his abdomen, his bones began to sprout out of his body and his skull began to crack. Feel it. Feel all the pain you have inflicted on others in all these years. May your soul rot in hell forever. May the demons feast upon it to eternity and may it feel the pain every second it spends there with the devil himself. Aldrich gave one last cry as his body blasted apart from inside out. The energy released threw Edmund away into the furniture, but he didn't care. He quickly got up, picked up the now dead man's wand and blasted it away into pieces using Raiden chakra. Not wanting to leave any evidence, he retracted the earth spikes using Doten Jutsu just in time as Aurors rushed out of their flue. Down on his knees and heavily breathing, he shakily turned around to face them and spoke weakly, "You took your sweet time to come here, huh?" But that, he fainted. The last thing he saw was the Aurors rushing over to him telling him everything will be okay. Waking up with a headache and a sore body was not at all pleasant. But, waking up knowing you've been pardoned of murder due to a bout of accidental magic and self-defense against a wanted criminal was something to celebrate for, even if you did murder the said criminal out of vengeance. Edmund had stayed in St. Mungo's spell damage ward for the past 3 days. His exposure to Cruciaticus was quite a lot. And using gates had only increased the amount of damage to his body. Alter Vulpes was on the run as he was suspected to have provided safe haven to a criminal, even if the said criminal was his own father. Edmund laughed but then winced in pain. Alter had dug his own grave. He still had a hard time trying not to laugh when he read the prophet again. Vulpes attacked at home, tortured by grandfather. Head of the family on the run. After being discharged, Edmund decided to stay at Leaky Cauldron for the rest of the summer. It was the last place Alter would ever decide to stay at due to the regular inflow of Aurors and other wizards and witches. Sometime in the middle of August, word went out that Sirius Black had escaped Azkaban. The whole magical Britain was on alert. Even the Muggle government was informed about him. Edmund just shrugged in indifference. He had other important stuff to focus on. Like looking at Iris's beautiful eyes widening in surprise upon seeing him outside her door as he was about to talk shit to his neighbor for causing noise when he was meditating. Apparently, the girl had opened her Care for Magical Creatures book without stroking its spine. Otter, didn't stroke it nicely, did ya? Oops, that did not sound right. What? Yeah. I meant your Magical Creatures book. You have to stroke its spine and then open it. Didn't the person at the shop tell you? Iris fidgeted and looked down. Edmund wanted to reprimand the girl as it made her look weak. A girl brave enough to face Lord Moldy at 11 and a basilisk at 12 was by no means weak. I kinda blew up my aunt and ran away. The minister had already bought my books for me so I didn't know about it, she said. Looking up, she noticed him smirking at her. She again looked down and closed her eyes, expecting something snarky and insulting. Ha! Blew up your aunt. Now that was some impressive piece of magic, wasn't it? She hesitated and then nodded, still looking down. Come on, Potter, look up, he reprimanded. You just killed a basilisk 3 months ago. Fidgeting like that and looking down at the ground makes you look weak. Are you a weak witch, Potter? Not getting any response, he gently grabbed her chin and pulled her face up, which was now completely flushed. Tilting his head, he looked into her wide innocent eyes and asked, or are you afraid of me? Iris's breath hitched in her throat as she frantically shook her head. Shy then? She again looked down and nodded once. Hey. None of that. Look up. Don't hide your eyes from me. Her head shot up and her eyes widened again. Edmund closed in, their faces only a few inches away from each other. His voice was soft as he said the next few words, do you even realize how beautiful your eyes are? Rots. Iris Potter's summer was going much better than the previous one. She was not starved, there were no bars on her window and no house elves to cause her trouble. She was behaving properly and in just a few days she would have gotten her guardian's signature on the consent form to visit Hogsmeade. But it all went down the drain when Aunt Marge came for a visit. The woman not only insulted her, but she went as far as to calling her father a drunk and her mother a whore. Unable to take the insult, she lashed out and lost control of her magic, causing Aunt Marge to blow up. Afraid that she would be punished, she ran away. The night's bus was a very new experience and she had been scared for her life. The driver was very reckless as he drove and she had to fight the momentum for balance. It was a miracle she wasn't hurt. Arriving at the cauldron, she was taken to the minister and was informed that no action was to be taken against her. The next day she woke up and decided to read her new textbooks. Intrigued by the odd-looking and animalistic magical creatures book, she opened it, which was a big mistake. The book snapped its teeth at her and she had to try her best to subdue it without destroying it. Then, someone knocked on her door, probably to scold her for causing too much noise. She opened the door only to find a very angry Edmund Vulpes standing at the entrance of her room with a scowl on his face. But surprisingly, it all vanished when he looked at her. Otter, didn't stroke it nicely, did ya? That sounded very wrong and it completely surprised her. After that, he quickly corrected himself and she briefly gave him the reason of her presence at the cauldron and why she didn't know about the book. She was expecting to say something demeaning, as he usually would say to anyone else. But he just laughed it off. She still remembered the conversation they had last year at the lake and was feeling very embarrassed due to what happened at the end of it. Her emotions were erratic in the chamber so it didn't affect her much. But now, it was a tad bit overwhelming. When she did not respond to him, he had grabbed her chin, pulled her face up and looked into her eyes. The gesture was too much for her and her eyes widened in surprise. He then asked, or are you afraid of me? No. She wanted to tell him. There was a tinge of worry and uncertainty in his voice as he asked that. She was just surprised by the way he was acting. But no voice could come out of her mouth, so she shook her head frantically. She could bet every galleon in her vault that she was blushing. Shy then? That made her feel even more embarrassed. She forced her head down and nodded. Then he reprimanded her for looking down again and asked not hide her eyes away from him. Shocked by what he could have meant by that, she looked up. To make matters worse, he brought his face closer to hers and she could feel his breath just inches away from her mouth. It was fresh and a bit minty. Then he said something that completely floored her. He said her eyes were beautiful. She could feel heat coming off her ears, face and her neck. He further closed in and she could almost feel his lips upon hers. Her heart was pounding violently against her chest. Almost subconsciously, she parted her lips a bit and inched forward, quite possibly giving him permission to kiss her. She couldn't understand what was happening to her and while her mind was shouting at her to back away, her body did not want to. A smirk slowly grew on his handsome face and his electric blue eyes shone with mirth. You look very cute when you blush, Potter. Then he backed away and released her chin. She felt a bit disappointed, though not knowing why. He just said goodbye and left after that. Iris kept standing there for a few minutes and dumbly went back inside her room. When she reached her bed, she let her body fall into the bed, hiding her blushing face in the pillow. How will I ever be able to look at him without blushing? Rots. It felt so good to embarrass Iris that Edmund skipped on his feet as he walked out of the cauldron in the alley. He was in a very good mood. Bouncing on his feet, he decided to explore. The accounts were being handled by the goblins and Vulpes' family was almost bankrupt. Furthermore, with Aldrich now dead, his uncle and Alter were not much of a challenge. But before he did any of that, he needed to up his training in magic. He could easily pass as a Jounin with the amount of skill he possessed with chakra. But his magical skills were sorely lacking. Making a decision, he went to the bookshop and showered galleons from his trust vault to buy many books. He still had a few hours before the express left the station. Rots. Looking outside the glass of his cabin, he noticed water freezing against the window. It was strange, and all the happiness from the morning was suddenly lost. Edmund did not like that. He came out of his cabin and looked around. Immediately, he began feeling dreadful. Like all the happiness in the world had disappeared. Hearing a raspy breath behind him, he turned around to see a cloaked figure floating just a few feet away. The figure closed in and opened its mouth. Immediately, Edmund remembered what it was. A Dementor. Of all the things to attack him, a Dementor was one of the last things he wanted to face. Soon, the Dementor's actions started to affect. Don't hurt him. Please. He's your son. Disgraceful. Ed. Demon brat. You're the Kyuubi. Look around you, so many dead, what will you do now, Naruto? Goodbye, old friend. Descendant. Edmund immediately snapped back and snarled, get away from me, you disgusting asshole. Pain. Rasengan. A red-colored fiery spiral of chakra formed in his hand and he slammed it into the Dementor's face. The Dementor screeched as it was thrown back and hurried away from Edmund. His Rasengan had scorched the wood around him. Thankfully, he had powered it down to prevent any fire. A man rushed towards him from another carriage. Edmund was panting, his breath trembled due to the after effects of his encounter with the foul being. The man took his arm and helped him up. Taking him back to his cabin, he helped him sit down and asked, a Dementor did this right? Edmund looked up. The man was around Snape's age and had a gentle but worn-out look on his face. Nodding his head, he replied, yeah, it was a Dementor all right. I used an incendio to drive it away. Stupid shit brought some bad memories with it. Well, seeing you are rather out of it, I'll not reprimand you for your language, young man. He then took out a piece of chocolate from his overcoat and continued, here, eat this. It will make you feel better. You keep chocolate in your pocket. Either you are as barmy as the headmaster is for sweets or you have woman you want to impress, Edmund joked good-naturedly. The man gave a barking laugh, you are funny. Eat it and stay inside till the train starts moving. Edmund nodded as the man left. His thoughts went back to the Dementor. The last word he heard was not in English, it sounded Japanese and very real to be just a memory. It was gruff and deep, like it belonged to something big. He'd think more about it later in his dorm. For now, he needed to enjoy the chocolate in his hand. It's a bit too sweet. Rots. The man from the train turned out to be the new Dada professor. A man named Remus Lupin. He didn't look too impressive and was not very well off given the state of his clothes. As the barmy old coot announced the presence of Dementors in search of one Sirius Black, needless to say Edmund had been left speechless by the amount of stupidity the minister could show. Dementors given free rein around a school full of children, Fudge's intelligence must have taken a long-term leave for him to even think of this. He could have appointed Aurors to do the job, but no, common sense was quite a rarity among wizards and witches. As Dementors were being mentioned, Edmund looked towards a certain raven-haired, green-eyed witch he had known for the past 2 years. The expression on her face told him she had experienced the foul things. Edmund narrowed his eyes in anger and frustration. Another year filled with danger for the poor girl. It seemed as if fate itself had something against her. He tried to recall all the time he had seen her laugh or even genuinely smile. He couldn't. The girl had suffered a lot in her short life and it seemed that she had yet to suffer a lot more. Even though he had his own fair share of suffering at the hands of his father, he was well fed, had proper clothes to wear, and most of all, had known the love of a mother. Shaking his head, he resumed eating. As much as he wanted to help her, he was powerless. Being a minor, he had very little privileges. Shaking his head again, he focused on his friends as they shared how they spent their summer after he was bombarded with questions about his well-being. The feast ended with a warning against Dementors and the old man's usual nonsense. Edmund knew that there was a possibility he'll be facing one again. He needed to learn more about them and if there were any spells other than Incendio that worked against them. Perhaps he could ask the new Dada professor, but then again, if he was competent enough. Rots. Edmund always wondered what his worst fear was. He had watched all kinds of things in Naruto's memories and there was nothing out there that could actually make scare him. But now that he looked at the boggart in front of him, or rather, himself, he realized his actual fear. It was the first Dada class and the professor was teaching the students how to deal with boggarts. Edmund's boggart took the form of the boy himself. The only difference being the eyes, red with slits instead of blue with normal pupils. The boggart had long fangs and claws and was surrounded by a red sinister aura in the form of 9 translucent tails. The air was thick with killing intent. Everyone was finding it hard to breathe and were looking at the boggart with absolute fear. The professor himself was shocked and his legs were trembling from the sudden appearance of such massive killing intent. Edmund tilted his head and smirked at the growling boggart, so that's my fear, huh? Becoming a bloodthirsty killer. Giving in to my demons and letting my sanity fade away. I need to rein myself in. Killing Aldrich really felt good. If I give in to the bloodlust I am developing, then there'll be no difference between them and me. With a wave of his wand and a chant, the boggart was transformed into a ferret running after its own tail. A collective gulp and sigh was heard in the room as some hesitantly laughed. Alright, I guess we'll continue next time. Class dismissed. The students quickly rushed out of the classroom, leaving a clearly agitated professor and a smirking Edmund behind. Can I help you with something, Mr. Vulpes? The man was clearly uncomfortable and the grin on Edmund's face was making it worse. Actually, Professor, Edmund started. I wanted to know if there are any spells that could work against dementors other than incendio or fire-based spells. Oh, well, there is one, but it's a highly advanced spell and only few can perform it. Really? Does this highly advanced spell that only few can perform has a name? It's called the Patronus Charm. The incantation is Expecto Patronum. Basically you focus on a happy memory and say the incantation. If the memory is strong enough and you put enough magic in it, the charm takes the form of an animal that represents you or the person you regard the most. Edmund was impressed. Very nice, Professor, it's good to finally see a competent teacher in this school. Thanks for telling me about it. I'll be on my way now. Good day, Professor. Remus just stood there and watched as the young student walked out of his classroom. He breathed a sigh of relief and slumped into a chair. The boy's boggart was really scary. His inner wolf was urging him to run away from the boggart as it scanned the room and bared its teeth. The feeling of fear that coursed through his spine was so primal as it looked into his eyes. Remus shuddered as he tried to forget that feeling. Oh well, he now had to prepare for his next class. Rots. Christmas holidays had begun and Edmund was on a journey to the hidden island near Japan, what once used to be known as the Elemental Nations. The planning to go on this journey began when Edmund was exposed to dementors during a Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff. During that time, he had once again heard that very realistic gruff animalistic voice that was most definitely in Japanese language. Edmund was somewhat overwhelmed when he reached to a conclusion after he searched through his memories. The voice quite possibly belonged to none other than Kurama, the Kyuubi no Kitsune himself. He knew that the chakra beasts were very much alive as they were entirely made of potent chakra. What he couldn't understand was why the Bijuu were trying to contact him. Perhaps because he was among the few who could use chakra. All he could do was make a guess. Rots. Standing in front of the 9-tailed beasts, Edmund had the first-hand experience of what true power was like. From controlling the very elements of nature to causing tsunamis and reducing mountains with a swish of a tail, the Bijuu were the epitome of power. He found it difficult to breathe in their presence. The Ichibi glanced at him and spoke in an unexpectedly high-pitched voice, so this is Naruto's descendant, huh? The resemblance is uncanny. The Didashukaku, the Kyuubi began. Looking at Edmund, he continued, it was really tough getting through to you, kid. Now that you are in front of me, I can feel my chakra signature in you. You've had a very tough and interesting life, little Uzumaki. Edmund was quite surprised, you can read my mind. Kyuubi smirked and replied, we all can. Since we shared our chakra with Naruto to help him win the shinobi war against Madara, he always carried some of our chakra with him and he passed it on to his kids. Why do you think that every other Uzumaki that became a wizard ever had one of the 9 transformations? What do you wizards call it? Animagus forms. It's a shame that Naruto's descendants lost most of their chakra and were killed off by their own sub-family. Edmund was stupefied. No one among his ancestors had ever recorded this in any of the scrolls. They had the ability to transform into one of the Bijuu. But since their chakra was pitifully low in amount, they could only transform into the miniature forms of the Bijuu and couldn't use any ability that they might have had access to. That's so, you've trying to talk to me. May I know why? We'll be training you and help you in harmonizing your chakra and magic. Gobi replied. That so-called Dark Lord of yours, Sanbi continued, though not much in front of us poses a great threat as we are susceptible to mind control. The Uchiha could do it with their Sharingan, it is possible that this Voldemort could do it with his magic. Kid, your father's family joined him in that war of you wizards and perhaps have told the madman about your family history. We don't want to risk our freedom granted to us by Naruto. I don't want to be controlled by a vile man and be used however he pleases, snarled Kyuubi as he violently swished his tails. Edmund's mind was going overdrive thinking of the possible terror Voldemort could cause if the Bidjuu fell under his control. The tailed beasts had stayed hidden for centuries, but he was able to find them by following the maps and his memories. What if the Vulpes family had something that could guide them to the Bidjuu and Voldemort was made aware of them? He shuddered thinking what the Bidjuu could do if they were let loose. They couldn't be killed, and there were no ninjas left who could deal with them. Only some wizards and witches who weren't even close to being the monsters who lived in Elemental Nation centuries ago. The Muggles couldn't possibly do anything to the chakra beasts. If Voldemort got hold of them, humanity could be at a risk of total enslavement under a madman. Taking a few deep breaths, Edmund looked up at the 9 Bidjuu and spoke, "I can understand the danger Voldemort poses and will do anything to eliminate the monster for good. I have been training as much as I can, but I know it's not nearly enough. Please, train me." Ayubi nodded, "Good that you understand. You already know quite a lot of ninjutsu. We'll help you increase your chakra reserves. Since you already know Shadow Clone Jutsu, training will be a lot easier. We don't have much time since you have to return to your magic school. Let's get started right away." Training with the tailed beasts was nothing short of torture, both physical and psychological. Edmund was constantly bombarded with their killing intent while he worked on his chakra control and dodged deadly sand shuriken for hours every day. The Bidjuu used their chakra to forcefully expand his chakra coils to increase his chakra capacity. They helped him understand magic and chakra and harmonize the two energies. Magic, as Edmund now understood, had some similarities with yin chakra. Magic was used to bend reality and allowed a person to create and do pretty much anything if one had enough understanding. While yin chakra, if one was proficient enough with it, could make illusions a reality. So Edmund's affinity with yin chakra was increased by the influence of Bidjuu chakra. This allowed him to understand magic better and was now able to mix both chakra and magic together. His ninjutsu power had increased exponentially as it was reinforced by magic, and so did the potency of his magic due to its constant use. Achieving harmony allowed Edmund to create shadow clones that had chakra and magic. Now he could practice both with shadow clones while he focused on physical aspects of being a ninja. When his time of staying with the Bidjuu came to an end, all 9 of them shared their chakra with him. One could say he now had as much chakra as Naruto had when he returned from his 3 years of training with Jiraiya. Bidding them farewell, Edmund returned back to Hogwarts just when the winter holidays were over. Rots. Edmund was busy reading magic theory in the library when he sensed killing intent coming from the forest. His clone that had been riding Iris's shoulder hinged as an insect dispersed and memories flooded into his mind. Looking around, he didn't see anyone near him, so he created a clone who kept reading in his place while he slipped away. As he approached the Whooping Willow, Edmund saw none other than his Dada professor transforming into a werewolf. A man was trying to hold him down as Iris had her wand pointed at a rat-like man and her 2 friends stood near the violent tree, supporting an injured dungeon bat. Well, I guess this one's time at Hogwarts is over. Rots. 3rd year was like a whirlwind for Iris. From a mass murderer out for her blood to dementors ready to eat her soul, Iris would sometimes contemplate if it's really worth it coming to Hogwarts at the risk of her life every other day. But it was the only place where she could go to escape her prison at her aunt's house. She had chosen care for magical creatures and divination as her electives as they were recommended by Dumbledore to her. She never understood why divination was necessary. It was such a dodgy subject and she had no interest in it. But she had to keep appearances. She had learned to do what was expected of her to avoid trouble. But trouble found her wherever she went. From trolls and possessed professors, basilisks and sentient books to escaped killers and soul-sucking wraiths, every year there was some danger and divination could hardly help her defend against these threats. Edmund Vulpes had asked her to study more and had tried to tell her that sabotaging her own education was not right. But Iris feared losing her friends. They were the only ones showed they care. Even though they practically abandoned her in 2nd year after the Heir of Slytherin fiasco, she was ready to give them another chance. Perhaps Edmund also cared as he had helped her many a time in the past 2 years. Thinking about the golden blonde-haired boy, Iris always got flustered as it always reminded her of their little intimate moment at the leaky cauldron. She would gain a full-blown blush whenever their eyes met at school, and his teasing grin was not helpful at all. She'd always get bashful and look away trying to ignore, but only to fail every single time. Aside from her moments with Edmund, she learned the patroness charm from her Dada professor who was also a friend of her parents. She wanted to ask him why he never tried to look for her, but held it back, not wanting to alienate him. She also found out that not only was Sirius Black a friend of her parents, but was also her godfather. She was extremely angry at the moment she learned the fact. She wanted to know why he betrayed them, and when she finally got the chance at the Shrieking Shack, she was shocked when the truth was told to her. Peter Pettigrew was alive after all these years and was hiding as none other than Ron's pet rat. After finally getting a confession out of him and when thinking all was good, Remus Lupin began transforming due to the full moon. Taking the opportunity to flee, Pettigrew transformed to his rat form and ran away. She was really scared at that moment. Remus was losing all rationality as he was transforming, and the process seemed very painful. Sirius was trying his best to help his friend, but it wasn't helping. Right when Remus was about to pounce at her and her friends, a deafening roar was heard, coming from the forest. Rots. Edmund saw Red when Wolf Professor was about to attack Iris. Abandoning all thoughts of self-preservation and hiding his abilities, he snarled and transformed into a 5-meter-tall Kyuubi and roared, showing his anger towards the pathetic wolf. He released the full extent of his killing intent towards the mutt. The wolf on his part was ready to flee, if not for his legs freezing due to fear. It was reminded of a certain boggart it had seen through its host's eyes. The feeling was similar, only this time, it was much stronger. Edmund rushed towards the group and stopped in front of Iris, his tail swishing wildly behind him, blocking the wolf who was whimpering in front of the superior predator. The transformed Sirius behind Remus was already lying down with his paws over his eyes and was whimpering and whining. Edmund roared again, this time much closer to the wolf's face, making the wolf to piss on itself and fall on its back while curling in a fetal position. He stopped when his rational side took over. He had just exposed one of his secrets and was now dreading it. He didn't want Iris to be afraid of him. Releasing that much killing intent recklessly must have affected her. Fearing the consequence of his error, he turned around, only to see Iris staring at him with wonder in her eyes. He had instinctively excluded Iris from his killing intent. Even though Iris was unharmed, it could not be said for her companions. Ranger, Weasel and the dungeon bat had already fainted, the latter foaming from his mouth. Iris stepped forward, with her hand raised towards the Kyuubi. Edmund remained still and allowed her to approach him. He understood what she was thinking. For her, he was just a rare magical creature who had helped her. Iris touched his muzzle as Edmund took a sniff of her hand. Perhaps it was due to his transformation and hormones, but he was finding her scent to be very addictive. Iris kissed his muzzle, whispered a thank you and moved back. Edmund took this chance and sped away towards the forest. He needed to clear his head. He kept trying to reason with himself that what he did was to protect his Iris. To protect my Iris. My Iris. My Iris. Shite. Hearing the deafening roar from the forest, Iris involuntarily trembled in fear. The transformed professor was already very dangerous and from the sound of the roar, whatever its source was, it was much more dangerous. In the next moment, all she saw was a blur of orange and a massive creature stopped in front of her, facing the werewolf. Its long tail swished behind it as it moved towards the professor, snarling at the now subdued and cowering wolf. Iris wondered how such a massive creature could be so fast. Looking behind her, she saw that her friends and Snape had already fainted somehow with the latter foaming from his mouth. She was startled when the creature roared once again, this time much louder than before. She feels slight tremors beneath her feet because of it. When the transformed professor was incapacitated due to fear, the creature turned towards her. She was amazed when she saw what the creature was. A 9-tailed fox, a mythical beast from what she had read in the introductory book for Care for Magical Creatures. It was said to be native in Japan, so its presence at Hogwarts confused her. Its blue eyes stared at her, devoid of any malice or hostility. The only emotion she saw in those intelligent eyes was fear and uncertainty. But when the fox's gaze settled on her, its eyes were relieved. She felt oddly attracted to it. Remembering her lesson with Hagrid, she slowly approached the fox. When she didn't see any hostility, she started petting it as it sniffed her hand. Its fur was soft as silk and despite of its large size, she found the fox to be incredibly cute and when she rubbed its small whiskers, the fox purred. Iris smiled and kissed its muzzle, whispering a thank you and moved away. As much as she wanted to play with it, she knew and understood that it wanted to get away. Just like she assumed, the fox ran away at blinding speed and within a moment, it was out of her sight. Rots. It was the end of the year feast and Edmund was eating his food while silently fuming at the old piece of shit known as Albus fucking Dumbledore. Being a master leglyman such as him and the chief warlock of the ministry, he had let an innocent man suffer in Azkaban prison. Sirius Black was innocent and was thrown into the prison without any trial. The Potters had been hiding behind the Fidelius charm with Peter Pettigrew as their secret keeper. Who had casted the spell? Why were the Potters targeted by that dark acid anyway? What danger could a newborn pose for him to try and kill Iris with the killing curse? That too after killing off her parents. The Longbottoms were attacked a few days after the attack on Potters and they too had been hiding just like Potters. Another thing he had noticed was the dark aura emitting off of Iris. Specifically the famous scar on her forehead. The aura had been getting stronger over the year and that worried Edmund. He knew that the scar was somehow connected with the dark acid as it would begin hurting whenever Quirrell had his back turned towards her. The aura getting stronger meant that the megalomaniac was gaining his power back and it was just a matter of time when he'd return. Edmund felt a need of urgency and prepare for a war to come. But first he had to know what the connection was between Iris's scar and Moldy. Perhaps tinkering with a dark mark on some death wanker's arm could shed some light. But who should he target? If only he knew where Alter or that damned uncle of his was. His mind went back to Dumbledore. The man had shamelessly told Iris and Granger to use a time turner and rescue Sirius Black, well he could very well force the minister to give the poor man a trial. How could he have not known that Peter Pettigrew was a traitor? Was he so trusting of everyone around him? If so then the old coot was going senile. But Edmund dismissed that idea as quickly as it popped up in his mind. No, there was a bigger ploy behind all this and he wanted to uncover it if he wanted to survive the oncoming war. Rots. The Quidditch World Cup match was a really boring affair. Edmund never enjoyed the game. He was there at the match only because the minister had personally invited him, but he couldn't understand why. They weren't close at all. Fudge had even given him a special seat, slightly away from the spectators. The minister knew Alter quite well as he was a major supporter of Fudge during his election campaign. Edmund's expression froze when he thought about the possibility. Could this be a plot against him? Suddenly, a sense of warning washed over him, just as last year when he faced Aldrich. He sensed killing intent from behind him and dodged just in time to see a pale green light pass above his head and dissipate in the air. Jumping backwards, he elbowed the attacker into the stomach and tripped it down. He heard an explosion and people screaming around him, but he ignored it all and began pursuing his attacker who was now trying to flee. "Oh no you don't," he snarled and threw a kunai at the attacker who was about to use a portkey and get away. The kunai stuck its hand and made it lose the portkey. The attacker, who was a man considering the pitch of his voice as he screamed, fell onto the ground and held his bleeding arm. Edmund approached the man and when he removed his death wanker mask, he was greatly pleased with what he saw. Well, look who entered the lion's den. Never knew you were this brave Uncle Alden. Trying to kill your own nephew, tch what a dark era the world has entered into. How could you be so cold? What has this sweet and innocent nephew of yours done to garner such hate from you that you want to kill me? Alden snarled, you filth. You killed your own grandfather and have the gall to ask me what you've done. When I learned what happened to him I swore revenge. And you decided to attack me at the match while the other wankers attacked the crowd. Tell me, what's your purpose behind this attack? Alden just spat at Edmund's feet and refused to speak. Sighing, Edmund kicked the man in the gut, making him cough a mouthful of blood. I won't kill you Alden. I'll give you a fair chance to fight. Without wands. A muggle brawl. How about it? Are you man enough? Or should I assume you are just afraid of your 14-year-old nephew? Being an impulsive and damaged man, Alden quickly agreed, already thinking of ways to make Edmund suffer with his bare hands. Edmund's smile turned into a feral grin, though it wasn't visible in the dark. Let's get out of here Alden. I promise a fair brawl to you. Without waiting for any consent, Edmund grabbed Alden and disappeared in a flash of yellow. Alden woke up in an unfamiliar place. Wondering where Edmund had brought him, he looked around to see the boy sitting on a chair, looking intently at him. So you finally decided to wake up. I've healed you already, fair fight and all that. Alden cackled and replied, you'll regret this brat. I'll enjoy watching the life fade away from your eyes when I have your throat in my hands. That's how you killed my aunt, right? My mother's little sister. You raped her as you choked her to death. Mom had left her memories for me to see what happened to the whirlpools. Alden threw his head back as he laughed, yes. I killed that bitch as I ravaged her. I remember her screaming and begging me to stop. Your whore of a mother begged for mercy. Too bad she was taken by Alter. I'd have enjoyed breaking her. What will you do? Kick my ankles? You think you can beat me with your hands? Edmund stared blankly at the beast laughing as he boasted. Focusing on his seals, he whispered, Kai. The seals flared and removed all the resistance on his body. What was that, boy? Alden snarled as he rushed towards Edmund with his fist raised, ready to clock him in the face. Edmund easily blocked his punch and rammed his knee into Alden's gut, making the man spit blood. Edmund grabbed him by his neck and threw him at the wall. What followed afterwards was thorough beatdown. Alden was thrashed and tossed around like a rag doll. Edmund was careful not to break any bones, except the jaw. It only took a minute for Alden to faint from the pain and blood loss. Edmund healed him again and strapped him to a chair while tearing off his clothes. Waking him up, Edmund said, I'll be asking you some questions, and if you answer them truthfully, I'll give you an easy death. Alden tried to speak, but his mouth was closed firmly by a piece of cloth. Moreover, his jaw was broken so he could utter little to no words. Edmund ignored him and began asking his questions. Why were the Potters targeted by Voldemort? Not getting any answer from the man, Edmund decided to start his torture. He had been working on various kinds of poisons and had concocted many in the past 3 years. He filled a syringe with his special torture poison and injected it into Alden's arm. When this poison will show its effect, all the nerves in your body will become hypersensitive. Then the skin on your body will begin to wither away as gashes will appear all over your body. Next your muscles will start breaking, slowly. You'll feel every fiber of your being tearing and breaking apart. Your stomach will produce acid in such high quantity that it will start burning through the stomach and escape into the cavity of your gut, burning everything inside. But don't worry, it'll slow. You'll feel your organs burning as you'll writhe and scream in pain. But it won't stop. As Edmund was describing the effects of the poison, Alden's skin was beginning to peel off due to the poison and disintegrate. Gashes began appearing all over his body, exposing his muscles to the environment. Terror-stricken, Alden screamed in agony. It felt much worse than the Cruciaticus curse. But you won't die, Edmund continued. After 2 hours the poison will fade away along with its effects. Everything will return back to normal. Then we'll have another enjoyable session of you being injected with another dose of the poison. But it will last longer. We'll keep doing it until you are ready to give me the answers. But don't worry, I'm not cruel, uncle. I will never kill you, directly, as you are part of my family. I won't touch a single hair on your body. Finishing saying what he wanted to, Edmund left the room as Alden continued to suffer. 2 hours later, Edmund returned after having a filling dinner. Seeing a fully healed Alden, he grinned. Ready for another dose, uncle? Alden screamed and tried to free himself from the chair. The last 2 hours were so agonizing that the thought of suffering through all that pain again terrorized him. The process of healing back to normal was much more painful, and he was horrified of the thought of experiencing it again. He was ready to answer any question Edmund wanted to ask but couldn't speak as his mouth was bound. Edmund injected another dose of the poison into him, this time more concentrated than the last. This one's effects will last for 6 hours. Its effects will be slower, but the pain it'll cause will be much worse. Enjoy. Alden struggled to get free and tried to beg for mercy, but Edmund had already left the room. Rots. 2 days of continuous agony had completely broken Alden and had left him as a trembling and sobbing mess. Edmund didn't hold back and exhausted all his supplies of the special poison. Approaching Alden, he undid the cloth on the man's mouth which was now soaking with blood. He then healed Alden's jaw and sat on a chair in front of his uncle. Now that you're subdued, let's begin. Why were the Potters targeted by Voldemort? Alden answered immediately in a shaky, monotonous voice. A prophecy was made that said about a child being born who will kill the Dark Lord. A prophecy? Who made the prophecy and how did Voldemort learn about it? It was Sybil Trelawney while giving her job interview to Dumbledore. Snape eavesdropped on their conversation and was able to hear the first half of the prophecy. It was him who informed the Dark Lord. Does Dumbledore know about this? Yes. Crap. Dumbledore knew Snape was responsible for Potters being killed and had still defended him, saying Snape was his spy. How does one obtain the Dark Mark? Can someone be forced to accept it? Alden answered in the same monotonous voice. The Dark Lord used to cast a spell in Parselting. Then we were required to kill an innocent soul for the mark to appear. It cannot be forced upon anyone. The Dark Lord wanted his followers to be loyal to him. So none of the Death Wankers were Imperiast. They all committed murder of their own will to get the mark. Edmund could bet every galleon that Dumbledore had known about that fact too. Moldy had used a spell in Parselting to give his dark mark to all the followers. Thus, it was a dead end for him. There was something in the dark mark that caused it to have a similar aura as that of Moldy's soul. This similarity was even shared by the scar on Iris's forehead, but it was much denser than the dark mark's aura. Deciding to think more about it later, Edmund asked Alden of all those who took part in the destruction of Whirlpool family. He wasn't surprised to know that Snape was there. He had personally killed one of Claire's brothers and her newborn nephew with a cutting curse. Undoubtedly, Snape was added into his kill list. Edmund had been getting frustrated day by day before the World Cup. He had to kill Alter before he turned 15 to get emancipated by activating the end-of-line clause. With Alden in his grasp, he could finally get the location of Alter and get his revenge. Where is your brother hiding? Where is Alter Vulpes? Edmund was in a dilemma. Even Alden was not aware of Alter's location as he always moved from one place to another after 2 to 3 days. He gave a frustrated sigh. What a waste. After getting further answers from Alden, Edmund decided to put the man out of his misery with more misery. You've been very helpful with this information, uncle. So I've decided to let you choose the way you die, he chirped. I know, you want a swift and painless death, right? Alden eagerly nodded. Edmund tilted his head and smiled. I don't think so. He created an all too familiar yellow orb of light between his fingers, looked at the now pathetic man begging for mercy and continued, this is kinda like poetic justice, isn't it? You're begging for mercy, just like my aunt did all those years ago when you raped her and strangled her to death. I want to see you scream as you die, I want to see the horror in your eyes as you feel yourself burn from inside out. I give you the same curse as the one I gave your father. I wish you eternal damnation. May you rot in hell." He shoved the orb down Alden's throat and watched from behind a chakra magic barrier as the man screamed in terror, his organs burning from the inside, his body bloating from everywhere, his bones popping out of his skin, his gut spilling from his stomach, his melting brain leaking out of his scattering cranium, and finally exploding into a bloody mess of bone and flesh. Removing the barrier, Edmund left the room as his house elves cleaned whatever was left of Alden. He rushed outside his manor and puked and started crying. Killing someone in such a horrible way, Edmund felt like he was a monster. The last time he was in too much pain and exhausted, but this time, he was clear-headed, which made the experience much worse. He had gotten revenge for his aunt, but at what cost? He had become a cold-blooded killer and a monster. Wiping his tears away and gargling away the aftertaste of vomit, Edmund hardened his eyes with resolve. "No, I may have become a killer, but I have to end this, or I won't ever get any closure. I have to make him suffer for all the wrong he has done to me. I have to make him suffer for taking away my humanity. I have to make him suffer for killing my mother." Rots. Hermione Granger was trying to read her book and miserably failing to do so. Weasel Boy was fuming with his ugly face, while bound to his seat and moving his mouth, failing to make any sound. Weaselette was meekly looking around, trying to ignore her embarrassment of a brother. Longbottom, such a funny name to have, was trying his to best stay unnoticeable. Iris Potter was sitting with her back straight as a stick and an extremely flushed face, and Edmund was enjoying the discomfort his appearance had caused. When Edmund had entered their compartment, his first action was to quickly approach Iris and say, "Ah, sweet Iris, you look ravishing today." Grabbing her head, he kissed her on her cheek, a little too close to her lips, and took a seat beside her. Iris was ready to faint but held on to her consciousness and remained seated with a dazed look on her face. Weasel sprang up in action, "You filthy Death Eater. How dare you?" But was stopped from saying anything further. Expelliarmus, Incarcerus, Silenco. Any attempts to undo his spells were quickly stopped by a stern warning from Edmund, "Try to undo my spells, and I'll prank you for the whole goddamn year. And you may already know that those infamous Weasley brothers have tried and failed miserably to prank me. You might also know how I retaliated by adding a potion of my own concoction in their food and made them dry hump each other in McGonagall's class." Of course the twins were spared from any major punishment as it was rather clear that they were victims of a prank. Suffice to say that they never targeted Edmund ever again upon knowing who pranked them by the prankster himself. The rest of the train ride went as quietly as it could, with only Edmund making small talk with Iris as the girl stuttered out her responses. Rots. Triwizard Tournament, the way the old coot advertised it made it look like a lifetime opportunity for someone to reach greatness and be forever recorded in the annals of time. Who was the last winner again? Edmund had no idea. Sitting among his friends at the Ravenclaw table, Edmund was getting bored as the manipulative goat continued his drabble. His friends and pretty much everyone else was excited and were talking amongst themselves about the tournament. Having nothing else to do, he sneaked a peek at the girl he had been having feelings for, only to see her quickly look down and avoid eye contact. Edmund smirked, perhaps she was still feeling bashful for what he did in the train. He was feeling really bold during the day and couldn't stop himself when his eyes fell on Iris, sitting in her compartment and having small talk with her friends. She didn't look anything like he had first seen her 3 years ago. Seemed like she had been taking her potions regularly, which were given to her as gifts during third year by Edmund. Her face looked really youthful and had a constant tinge of pink to it. Her shiny raven black hair were tied neatly into a ponytail. When Edmund had entered the compartment, her eyes sparkled and she smiled with her reddish pink lips that made her look really cute and entrancing. The result of this was a kiss. He wanted to snog her right then, but refrained from doing so and diverted from his intended target at the last moment. Iris tried to take a peek at him again, but quickly looked down when she noticed him still looking at her. Edmund wanted to laugh and pinch her cheeks because of the way she was acting. With his mood lightened, he focused on having his dinner and ignored whatever his friends were saying about the unfairness of not being able to enter the tournament because of the rules. Like he would want to enter a stupid tournament for public entertainment. He wasn't a circus animal. Suddenly a loud bang was heard which startled him to almost arm himself with a weapon. The doors of the great hall were flung open and a man entered with a limping gait, his artificial eye scanning every nook and cranny of the hall as he rushed towards the old coot. The man was introduced as none other than Alistair Moody, commonly known as Mad-Eye Moody, a retired Auror who had actively taken part in the last war against that dark acid. What surprised Edmund was that he was the new Dada professor. Dumbledore had really outdone himself this time. Looking at his record of hiring incompetent professors or a professor with glaring concerns to public safety, Moody was a really big improvement. Or was there a catch to this one too? Just like the rest of them? Meh, why should he care? It's not like this one could do much damage, right? Rots. Edmund was absolutely livid and on the brink of snapping some necks. Alistair Moody, he had assumed that Moody would be a good teacher, but no, he was the worst. Casting unforgivables right in front of naive 14-year-old teens, it made Edmund despise him. From what he had heard, Moody tortured a spider with Cruciaticus right in front of Longbottom, whose parents were still in a magical-induced coma at St. Mungo's. Edmund growled again and slashed his wind chakra-coated sword at a training dummy. It all came back to one stupid man. Albus, the ever-so-eccentric meddlesome cock-sucking faggot Dumbledore. Oh, Edmund hated him. He had understood the old man's game. Since the moment Iris stepped into the walls of Hogwarts, she had been in many life-threatening situations and had to take the full brunt of sheep mentality of wizards. She had to face danger every single year and at the end of it, she was sent back to her relatives who prayed for her death every day. All of this was caused by one barmy delusional old fuck. He had left Iris on the doorsteps of magic-hating muggles, had constantly pushed her against the odds by testing her in his own twisted way, and had manipulated her into looking up to him as her savior. But, what could Edmund do to make Iris see the reality? Her two stalkers were always around her and did their best to isolate her and pushed away whoever tried to get close to her. His feelings for Iris were extremely clear and it pained him to see her getting hurt, both physically and emotionally. All he needed was one opportunity, just one, and he'll expose everyone who had tried to harm her, control her and use her for their benefit. Rots. I believe you. The moment the words left his lips, Edmund wondered if they were the wrong ones. The look on Iris Potter's face as she whipped her head around to stare at him was heartbreaking, to say the least. When the goblet selected Iris as the fourth champion, Edmund could see the shock and fear on her face. It was so very clear that she was caught completely unaware and had no intention of entering the tournament. But, being the naive teens and a habit of behaving like sheep, Iris was blamed for being a glory hound and a cheat. Many students had wanted to participate in the tournament and it was a big deal for them. For a 14-year-old to trick the goblet and then claim innocence, they felt wronged. Even her best friends, Weasel and Granger, had abandoned her, the former accusing her for cheating and having all the glory and money, while the latter just followed the crowd, sparing a look of guilt at Iris and leaving without a word. At the end of the day, not a single one of her house were still with her any longer, leaving them all alone in the corridor Edmund had chosen to confront Iris in. Edmund allowed a smile to appear on his face and said in a reassuring tone, "I believe you. You didn't enter your name in the tournament. I believe you." 3 little words. In 3 words, Edmund Vulpes had managed to accomplish what Malfoy and Snape had been trying and failing to do for the past few years. He'd broken Iris Potter. She all but collapsed forward into his robes, her sobs and wails muffled by the high-quality fabric, but he could most definitely feel the trembling of her body as he wrapped his arms around her. Edmund quickly got to work on calming down the savior of the wizarding world, rubbing circles into the small girl's back with one hand, he stroked the other through her tangled mess of hair. As he held Iris Potter's 2 small body close and began to carry her along, he spoke up, "Potter Samhain really isn't a good day of the year for you, now is it?" Her grip on him tightened and she shook her head into his shoulder, even as her sobs lightened up a bit, her focus turning towards hearing him speak rather than her own current overwhelming issues. "First you lost your parents to the Dork Lord. Then, your first year here, you end up facing a troll of all things. Safest place in all of magical Britain, my arse." Iris was shaking in his arms a little. Was she laughing, perhaps? Or more likely, she was laughing and crying at the same time. Edmund smiled slightly, even as he considered his own current big dilemma. Where was he going? He couldn't take her to the Ravenclaw dorms for incredibly obvious reasons. Nor was he going to take her to the Gryffindor dorms. Not only was he not intending on leaving her in her current state, he wouldn't likely get a word out before he was hexed for the mere crime of touching a crying Gryffindor, much less the girl who lived, despite everyone in that house currently shunning her. In the end, there was no choice but to use the room of requirement, which he had found by accident last year. So with that decided, Edmund started making his way up to the 7th floor, taking the long way around to avoid running into people. "You took the troll down, Potter. Even though I thought you were reckless and disapproved of it, I thought the books about you might have some truth in them. You might not have had all those crazy adventures they made up about you while you were growing up, but you do have the heart of a lion beating within your breast, now don't you?" He was speaking conversationally, but Edmund would have to be a fool not to feel her reactions, given he was currently holding her quite close to him. She was hanging off his every word, even as he paused for a moment, watching the staircase before him shift about until it's connected to the landing he wanted to go to. Then came second year and the heir of Slytherin. Obviously, it was never you. People can be so small-minded. Especially in large groups. Still, being able to speak Parselting is nothing to be ashamed of, as I told you that night beside the lake. It might have garnered a bad reputation here in the United Kingdom, but it is greatly valued in places such as Egypt, India, Africa, and elsewhere around the world. You could probably make a lucrative and exciting career out of nothing but translating what magical serpents across the globe are saying, given how rare the ability is. By the time he was done speaking, Iris wasn't hiding her face in his shoulder anymore. Instead, teary emerald eyes are staring up at him in honest curiosity and even a small amount of wonder. Edmund smiled down at her, even as he continued his journey to the 7th floor. It's no mark against you that you don't know about all of this. You would need to order books from outside of Britain to find any of this sort of stuff out. You might have asked for help but were turned away, clearly they don't want you to learn something they see as dark and are too scared of. I can lend you a few later, so long as you promise not to let Granger set her eyes on any of them. She'd likely get them confiscated, like I heard she did with your broom last year. Edmund lets out a sigh, even as Iris's eyes sparked and hardened at the reminder. Last year was the Dementors. Let's not even get into that mess. No, let's talk about this stupid tournament instead. Stupid? For the first time, Iris spoke up, her voice quiet but very notably surprised. Edmund grinned down at her at that. Very stupid. Don't think I don't know that, and don't let anyone else try to convince you otherwise. The Truewizard tournament was discontinued for a reason, Potter, and the fact that it's been brought back without even a single attempt at revamping the rules and working more safeguards into the entire thing is a travesty of the highest order. Oh, but wizards do seem to love to look back on the past with rose-colored goggles several inches thick, don't they? He'd finally reached the painting of Barnabas the Barmy. As Iris considered and processed his words, Edmund paced back and forth before it, all while focusing his hardest on what he would need for the night to take care of the small slip of a girl in his arms. A bed, certainly. A bath as well. Clothes and various hygiene products were also a must. Anything else, Edmund knew he could call upon the house elves for. He had an entire stable of elf names that he used whenever he needed their assistance, never making sure to call on the same one too many times in a row. The door to the room of requirement had appeared, and Edmund felt Iris stiffen in his arms as he reached out and opened it, pushing his way inside. Whatever she might have said about the door not being there before was caught in her throat when she saw the beautiful interior of the room. Even Edmund is impressed by what his imagination has wrought and left to wonder if perhaps the room of requirement had some sort of mind of its own that was inclined to spruce things up a bit. Regardless, he doesn't let his own surprise give him pause like Iris did with hers. Instead, he made a beeline towards the extravagantly large bed that took up the center of the room, letting her sit at its edge. The seniors talk about it sometimes. Every single year since you've arrived, it's been one thing after another. Something you need to learn now is this. Once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, but 3 times is enemy action. Someone is trying to plot against you, Potter, and they've thrown all subtlety out the window with this latest attempt. Why anyone can think you would have willingly put your name in the goblet, well, it just goes to show how stupid most of Hogwarts residents truly are. Iris looked up at him, alarmed by what he just said. Someone's plotting against me. But who? Could it be Voldemort? I've been having dreams of him being in a shack, along with Pettigrew and another person. Edmund sighed, this will be a long night. Just as Edmund was about to explain to Iris about all the shit she had to face, Iris spoke up in a low, quivering voice, it's Professor Dumbledore, isn't it? Edmund's eyebrows rose up to his hairline as he slowly nodded his head. I always suspected, she continued. I have never trusted adults due to my experience with my family. When Hagrid brought me to Diagon Alley for the first time, he kept me extremely close to himself. Whenever I tried to ask him about my parents or the wizarding world in general, he was very tight-lipped about it. All he ever told me was that my parents were good people and all Dark Lords were from Slytherin. At first I thought he was hiding things from me at his own volition, but as I interacted with him I knew he was acting under orders. She looked up at Edmund, who wasn't trying to hide his surprise from Iris. Looking into her eyes, he confirmed her thoughts with a nod and indicated her to continue. Then he suddenly disappeared when I was about to ask him how to reach platform 9 3/4. I was lost at the train station when out of nowhere this lady rushed past me and proclaimed loudly, there are muggles everywhere. Where was platform 9 3/4 again? Her daughter, Ginny, replied, right that way, Mom. I followed her and she helped me get through the gateway. I didn't know at first, but now I understand. Mrs. Weasley broke the statute of secrecy that day when she yelled out about muggles and the platform. She was also a student here, so why did she need to ask her daughter about the platform? It was for me. She was probably ordered by someone to help me reach the platform. That someone was none other than Dumbledore. Iris continued to amaze him. The girl was really clever to have deduced all that. He kept quiet and sat down on a chair that had just appeared behind him. Ron was a git at first. But when he saw that I didn't like his attitude towards Hermione, he changed within an instant. When I did much better than the two in our first test, I could see the loathing and jealousy in Hermione. Ron on the other hand was angry that I did better than him when Professor McGonagall had praised me. He didn't express it, but he did nothing to hide his anger. I didn't want to lose my only friends, and so I decided to drop at Ron's level. You were right, I shouldn't have done that. All the time Edmund kept looking intently at her. A small tear rolled down her rosy cheek as she sniffed. Reaching forward, he gently wiped away the tear with his thumb and cupped her cheek. Iris looked at him, her watery eyes were red with all the emotions welling up inside her. Edmund nodded again, showing his support with a smile. They kept others away from me. I don't really talk to others or have many friends because they are always nearby and drag me away or change the conversation. I used to think they were being protective. How naive I was, Iris chuckled bitterly. At the end of first year I, along with Ron and Hermione, went after someone who was trying to steal the Philosopher's Stone. Do you know what they were hiding at the third-floor corridor? Edmund nodded and interrupted her, yeah, I know. I was there when you passed all the obstacles and confronted Voldemort. Iris was shocked and shouted, how? I didn't even see you there. Crap. Nervous about her next possible reaction, Edmund rubbed the back of his head and replied, well, you see, I may have been following you since the night we met in front of that mirror. Iris narrowed her eyes at him while he averted his eyes away. How were you able to follow me without anyone seeing you? I will tell you once you are finished telling me about past 3 years, I promise. Edmund replied with a sincere expression. Iris continued staring at him. Not noticing any lies, she nodded and continued, as you had seen, the traps were really easy. 3 first-year students were able to get through them, how could they possibly stop anyone who wanted to steal the stone? That was when I first suspected Dumbledore. Before second year Ron and his brothers rescued me from my relatives and took me to their home. When Fred and George told Mrs. Weasley about my living conditions, she outright dismissed them. She coddled me and fed me a lot. It was overwhelming. I didn't realize it before, but now I do. She always made me sit with Ron and made him go wherever I went to accompany me. She did the same last year at the Leaky Cauldron. She was never too subtle about it and kept mentioning how cute we looked together. Edmund was seething by this point. How dare she? That no good lard of fat. Iris continued, not noticing the storm brewing in his eyes. She's been trying to get me closer to Ron in more than a friendly way. Well, second year started like the first, just with a house elf creating problems for me. Problems, she's moderating that elf's involvement. I'd wring that stupid elf's neck for hurting her. Edmund narrowed his eyes. It all started when Filch's cat got petrified. I really wanted to thank you for helping me when he accused me for what happened to his cat. When Dumbledore claimed me being innocent until proven guilty, I felt betrayed. He all but said that I was a suspect. Why would he do that to me? He had been so good to me. He even returned my father's invisibility cloak. She was welling up but calmed herself by taking a few deep breaths. After Colin was petrified, everyone was so scared. It escalated when I talked to that snake which was summoned by Malfoy. I was really trying to stop it from hurting anyone. But, I was accused by the whole school for being the heir of Slytherin. How could I possibly be? Then everyone started bullying me. Why didn't the teachers stop them? Why did they turn a blind eye to whatever I went through? I was cursed regularly behind my back. Even Ron and Hermione kept their distance. But then, you helped me understand. It's because of you that I could continue to face them. Her eyes were sparkling, enhanced by the small amount of tears. Edmund could feel his face heat up. Her smile was so enchanting, he could just sit there and look at her smile all day long. Merlin, how much he loved her. Gulping down whatever urges he had, he flashed her a smile and said, I, couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I always knew you were innocent. Because you've been following me since first year. Aren't you a bit of a stalker? She asked, again narrowing her eyes at him. Edmund laughed nervously and quickly replied, I'll explain, please continue. Iris pouted. Damn. You're killing me, Iris. Please, for the love of Merlin, don't pout like that. Edmund looked away, not trusting his control over his urges to show his love for her. Her pout intensified, but she relented, alright, you promised. Well, when I was in Dumbledore's office after I returned from the chamber, I couldn't help but think how it was possible for him not to know about the chamber or the basilisk. Even in first year, he left for the ministry on the very day Voldemort tried to steal the Philosopher's Stone, that too on a broom when he has a flu network in his office. Edmund agreed, yeah, I had the same suspicion. And, I want to apologize for not helping more down in the chamber. If I got more involved in the fight, you wouldn't have got bitten by the snake. Hey, it's alright. Because of that I am now immune to every poison in this world. Edmund smiled and shook his head when she instantly forgave him. He then asked her to continue. Third year, Sirius Black escaped from Azkaban. I was really scared when they told me that he wanted to kill me. The Dementors were the worst. I was really angry when I learned that Sirius was my godfather and everyone hid the fact from me. When I confronted him in the shrieking shack, I just wanted to hit him with every offensive spell I knew. But, turned out he was innocent and Ron's pet rat, who was an animagus, was the real culprit. I was happy when we caught Pettigrew. I thought that I finally had the chance to have a real family. But, Professor Remus transformed into a wolf and Pettigrew escaped. I was scared when he was about to lunge at me. But I was saved by a nine-tailed fox. You saw it too, right? It was so massive. Edmund was fidgeting in his chair. Should he tell her that he was the fox itself? About that. Iris narrowed her eyes again. Shite. You see, I happen to have an animagus form. Iris's eyes went wide like saucers. She jabbed her finger at him and said, "That was you." How? That was a magical creature. Wait, usually their eyes are red. But that fox's eyes were blue. I always thought its eyes looked familiar. They were so beautiful. Iris blushed heavily and looked down. Gaining some confidence back, Edmund smirked, "So you think my eyes are beautiful, huh?" Iris pouted again, "Oh, shut up." Anyway, she continued, trying to ignore her blushing face and the teasing smirk on Edmund's face which kept on widening. I tried to explain to the minister that Sirius was innocent, but he didn't listen. We even told Dumbledore, but he said he couldn't do anything. In the end, I and Hermione had to save him using a time turner. Taking a deep breath, she continued, "Finally, this year it was the Death Eater attack at the World Cup. Even after that the officials decided to hold the Triwizard Tournament after so many years. I don't know what I was expecting as I got involved into a dangerous situation this year too. Someone put my name into the cup and confounded it to select me as the fourth champion. It's second year again. Everyone has expressed their loathing for me. Why can't I just have one peaceful year? Why didn't Dumbledore put more security around the cup? He has known that I face danger every year, but all he did was put an age line around it. He even asked me if I put my name in the cup." "Alright," Edmund took a deep breath and began. "Yes, you are right about suspecting him. Let me tell you what you don't know. Perhaps it will answer the questions you have in mind." Edmund began, "I was there when those good-for-nothing death wankers attacked at the World Cup." "The FFT death wankers?" Edmund chuckled, "Yeah, I have a habit of making fun of some things I don't like. So don't be surprised when I call them death wankers or as in our headmaster's case, Dumbledore." Iris giggled, the sound of bells. Continuing with what I was saying, a death wanker was captured by me, not before he was hit with a withering spell. Turned out, it was my father's brother. Iris gasped, what happened to him? Is he alright?" Edmund knew she was conflicted. On one hand she hated everything related to Moldy, but on the other hand, the one caught was his uncle, his family. He smiled, trying as he might, he couldn't stop a gloomy expression appear on his face. "Iris, I have no love for my family on my father's side. Every single one of them are or were part of that dark assets group of wankers. The Whirlpool house, my mother's house, was destroyed by my grandfather, my father, my uncle and their fellow wankers. The day after my mother was married to Alter Vulpes was the day they all but exterminated the Whirlpools. When I was born, Alter hated me for not having any physical traits like him. Instead, I looked like a typical Whirlpool, the house he loathed. He tortured me and my mother with Crucio since as long as I can remember. He killed Mom when I was 7. She died in my arms, telling me how much she loved me. I swore revenge that day. So, I did nothing to save my so-called uncle." Iris's face had gone white as sheet. To think someone could do that to his own wife and child. The worst part, they enjoyed doing what they did. Vulpes was a branch family of Whirlpool. They killed their own kin. Edmund had to try his all not show any murderous intent. But, Iris could feel it. She understood him. He was going to die anyway, so I administered a few drops of Veritaserum in his mouth and asked a bunch of questions. The first one being, why did Voldemort target your family? Iris widened her eyes and sat straight, looking at him with rapt attention. There was a prophecy about a child who will be born as the 7th month dies. That child will bring the downfall of the Dark Lord. Can you guess who heard that prophecy? Iris just shook her head, too shocked to give a verbal reply. The prophecy was made by Sybil Trelawney on her job interview with Dumbledore. A Death Eater eavesdropped on it and was only able to hear the first half of the prophecy. That Death Eater was none other than. His expression turned stormy, Severus Snape. Iris stared at him, her mouth hung open, and her eyes grew even wider. Snape was the reason why Voldemort came after her. He still had the gall to insult her on every chance he got and insulted the memory of her father. The snake was there when the Whirlpools were killed. He personally murdered my mother's brother and his newborn son. After all the crimes he committed, Dumbledore vouched for him, saving him from being sent to Azkaban. He told everyone that Snape was his spy. By this time, Edmund was growling and did nothing to hold back his anger. Iris on the other hand was so shocked she felt numb. Then I asked him about the dark mark. No one can obtain it without their own consent. They need to be willing to get it. A Death Eater had to commit murder of an innocent soul, that means they had to kill a child. Then the mark would appear on their forearm. And guess what? Dumbledore knows about this. He is the chief warlock and the supreme mugwimp in ICW, still, he did nothing to stop the Death Eaters from claiming being Imperiast. But why? Her voice was quivering with a feeling of betrayal and rage. I don't know what his endgame is. But I do know it's somehow related to that prophecy. There's another thing that worries me. What's that? It's your scar. I can feel the taint in it whenever I am near you. It gives off the same feeling as the dark mark, but stronger. It's also similar to what that Orc Lord soul felt like when he was here in our first year. So did that diary in our second year. Iris was scared, so does this mean? Edmund nodded, yes, you share some form of connection with him. More specifically, your scar. That fact that the aura around your scar is similar to that of his soul, it indicates that soul magic was involved. I have been thinking about this for a while. His diary, it could influence Weaselette to open the chamber and granted her the ability of parcelting, temporarily. No simple memory can do that. They sat in silence as they thought of the possibilities. Since you said soul magic was involved, Iris said. Could it be that the diary contained his soul after it escaped? Edmund shook his head, no, it was weaker than what his soul felt like. Perhaps it was a part of it. Their eyes widened in horror. Iris was shaking as her breath quickened, and no, there is a part of his soul in my scar. That's why I have been having dreams about him being somewhere. Edmund, get it off me. Please. She began clawing at her scar as tears rolled down her face. She felt disgusted. Edmund himself was stupefied. He was reminded of a snake-faced freak who lived during his ancestors' time, back in the elemental nations. The curse mark. Frowning, Edmund resolved to help Iris, who was bawling with her face in her palms. Getting up, he gently placed a hand on her shoulder and said in a soothing tone, don't worry, Iris. I'm here. I'll help you get rid of it. Now. I want that thing out of my head now. She shouted. Alright, we'll do it now. Iris looked at him with desperation as Edmund concentrated on finding a method to get rid of the soul piece in her scar. He recalled Sasuke Uchiha telling Naruto how Itachi Uchiha helped him get rid of his curse mark. But before that, he had already killed that snake face. Orochimaru designed his curse mark in such a way that he could possess someone's body, killing the person's soul. The curse mark helped him during the soul transfer. But he could come back from the dead and have a new body for himself, just with the help of the curse mark, as he did with Kabuto's mark. Voldemort's diary was somewhat similar. It was draining Weaselette's soul off its energy, and with it he could revive himself. But, he couldn't revive himself just with a diary, as there was no soul to drain power from. That was not the case with Iris. She was a living being, and his soul piece could have possessed her completely. It was a miracle that she was still herself. Orochimaru had a dimension for himself where he would kill the other person and take over the person body. But there was no such thing in this case. Magic, was there some spell that he could use? For years he had been studying different kinds of magic, and there must be something that could help him. The killing curse. It shredded the target soul into oblivion. If he tried that on her scar, could he kill the soul piece while Iris remained unharmed? Would she even trust him to cast such a spell on her? No, there had to another way. The mindscape. He had to try that option. Looking at Iris, he said, Iris, hold out your fist. Why? She asked as she cocked her head sideways. Just do it. I have to try something. Trust me, if this works we won't have to deal with this the hard and more dangerous way. Nodding, Iris held out her fist, which was met with Edmund's. He closed his eyes and Iris could feel herself being pulled somewhere. They found themselves in front of a house. Iris was a bit surprised to find herself at a familiar place. How did we get here? She asked, looking around trying to find if anyone saw them suddenly appear in the middle of the street. Edmund looked around the dark and gloomy place and replied, this is what your mindscape looks like. A place where you keep your memories. But, why does it look like this? Do you know this place? Nodding, she replied, yeah, I live here with my relatives. Pointing towards the house in front of them, she said, that's number 4 Privet Drive, her house. With a grim expression, Edmund said, Iris, this house reeks of malice. The aura around it very dark and deathly. Iris gasped and her head snapped towards the place. Come on. He beckoned her to follow, cautious with every step he took forward. The murk inside was very intense. It intensified when they moved towards the kitchen. It was the maximum near a door under the stairs. He immediately knew that the source of the murk was inside the cupboard. As he was about to open it, Iris grabbed his wrist and rapidly shook her head. Her expression was that of panic, as if she was trying to hide something from him. What happened, Iris? Why did you stop me? I can feel the source of all this gloom behind this door. Let's look somewhere else. I think we should look upstairs. That's where my room is. Edmund looked intently at her and freed his wrist from her grip. Despite her protests, he grabbed the door handle and yanked it open. What he saw made him want to puke. A dark, shadowy infant was lying on a torn bloody mattress, hissing at him. Suddenly, the shadow released a burst of darkness and flung Edmund and Iris out of the house. The darkness gathered onto the roof of the house and condensed to form a hooded figure, which eerily looked like a disembodied Voldemort. Gathering her courage, Iris shouted, "Voldemort." The figure looked down at them and shrieked, releasing a massive amount of dark intent. Edmund flared his chakra and battled with the intent to push it back. Voldemort pointed his hand at them and a wand materialized in it. He hissed, "Avada Kedavra." Edmund tackled Iris away from the spell and charged at the dark wizard. Making a horse hand sign, he breathed, "Caton. Majestic destroyer flame." A stream of fire was exhaled out of his mouth as it rushed towards Voldemort to burn him asunder. Voldemort waved his wand and summoned a huge amount of water to counter Edmund's flame jutsu. Needless to say there was a lot of steam. Edmund quickly maneuvered through the steam. Closing in on Voldemort, he slammed a yin release. Rasengan into his back which grinded through his cloak. Voldemort shrieked as he was thrown spinning into the air due to the sheer force of Edmund's attack. Having added yin chakra into his Rasengan, the damage it dealt was immense. Iris was shocked to say the least. One moment Edmund was standing beside her, somewhat guarding her from Voldemort, and in the next moment, he released a stream of fire from his mouth which had really high temperature. Then he created a spinning ball of magic and with unimaginable speed, he slammed it into Voldemort's back and sent him flying. How did he get so fast? How was he able to do such strong and peculiar wandless magic? So entrapped with Edmund's prowess, she didn't notice Voldemort casting a killing curse at her. Suddenly Edmund appeared right next to her and slammed his hands on the ground, making a wall of stone rise behind her. The curse struck the wall and shattered it. The force threw them several feet away. "Snap out of it, Iris. I'll answer all your questions. Fight him." Iris quickly got up and held onto her wand, getting ready to join the fight. Voldemort sneered and fired one dark curse after another. To counter them, Edmund threw kunai coated with yin chakra and magic. Not one to stand back from a perilous situation, Iris joined the fight and began casting her own cutting and blasting curses. Seeing that the battle was at a standstill, Voldemort snarled, "Falman." A ray of plasma came rushing at them at high speeds. Edmund pushed Iris out of the way and sped through hand signs and shouted, "Purple lightning." A widespread stream of purple thunder met Voldemort's spell as it destroyed the pavement and street below it. Sensing his jutsu losing its power, Edmund snarled, "Shadow clone jutsu." 20 lookalikes of Edmund puffed out of thin air and breathed out fire jutsu at Voldemort. Sensing mortal danger, Voldemort ended his spell and quickly apparated away. He focused on his magic and casted terror golems. Numerous earth golems sprouted out from the street and rushed towards Edmund, who had created several clones to fight them. Meanwhile, Voldemort focused on Iris and sent a stream of killing curse at her. Seeing the offensive magic coming towards her, Iris gathered all the magic she could and casted a disarming charm to push the curse back at her adversary. The spells met and entered an impasse. They pushed all the magic they could possibly push. Since Voldemort just had a fragment of his power, Iris was successful in pushing the spells towards him. Edmund was desperately fighting the golems that kept healing themselves by absorbing the rubble around them. When he saw Iris and Voldemort fighting each other, he and his clones got desperate and roared together, "Black Chidori stream." Large amount of black lightning struck the earth golems and blasted them into cinders. Just as he was about to rush towards the two, Voldemort's spell was pushed back at him and struck him, destroying the soul piece. Iris fell backwards but was caught by a heavily breathing Edmund. "You were brilliant, Iris." She smiled up at him and fainted. Edmund pulled himself and Iris out of her mindscape. He found himself sitting on his chair while Iris had fallen back on the bed, black goo dripping from her scar. Getting up, he washed away the goo and asked the room to change the sheets. He then tucked Iris into the bed and kissed her forehead. "Rest for now, my sweet Iris. I won't let anyone hurt you. I'll be there for you, forever. This is a promise of a lifetime, and I never go back on my word." Rots. Waking up, Iris found herself in an unfamiliar place. Looking around she found Edmund sleeping on a chair. Smiling, she got out of her bed with mischief in her mind. She turned around and was about to walk up to him, but just saw an empty chair. Suddenly, she heard someone speak right next to her ear. "Glad you're up." Iris screamed and jumped onto the bed, only to find Edmund laughing at her. Scrunching her nose she huffed and looked away, blushing with indignation. "How did you get behind me? How are you so fast? I want answers and I want them now." Iris huffed and crossed her arms below her breast. "Aren't you a little too eager, princess? It's 6 in the morning. We need to eat something and pacify my friend's worries and in your case, your so-called friend's interrogations about your whereabouts last night." Iris groaned. She was not in the mood to be at the receiving end of Hermione's endless questions and her mothering and Ron's jealous self throwing insults. Moreover, she didn't want to be in a hall full of bitter children who would throw curses at her the moment they see their chance. Reading the situation from her expression, Edmund smirked as an evil idea came to his mind. "Wanna play a prank on the sheep of Wizarding World?" Iris tilted her head and asked innocently, "How?" Keeping his smirk, Edmund replied, "Like this." The clone puffed beside him and then hinged itself into an identical-looking Iris wearing casual clothes. Iris jumped when she saw Edmund's twin suddenly appear out of nowhere and perform some kind of wandless shape-shifting magic to look like her. "You saw this how?" "That's the same thing you did against Voldemort. Only without the transformation thing." Edmund just smiled cheekily and said, "I have a unique ability that allows me to do some things wandlessly. I'll explain everything later. How would you like to see everyone react to an Iris with an attitude like mine?" For a moment Iris just looked at him but soon started giggling which turned into full-blown laughter. Oh, the mess this could make of the weak psyche of those poor wizards. She just nodded frantically as she was unable to get her laughter under control. Edmund smirked and created another clone. Both clones nodded and went outside. "Let's sit down, Iris. I share a mental link with my clones so I can see whatever they see and do." He held his fist towards Iris as they sat down. "We'll do it the same way as before. I'll pull you into my mindscape and we'll watch whatever happens like watching a movie on a big screen. But my arm will get tired if I hold it up for so long." Iris whined like a child. Amused by her antics, Edmund shook his head. He wondered just how could she possibly act her age after suffering though all the misery in her life. She was really strong and he admired her for it. With a mischievous glint in his eyes, Edmund closed in towards her. His face was just inches away from hers and he could see her getting flustered with her cheeks flaring up with heat. "Then why don't we just hold each other's hands?" Iris's face was so red by that point Edmund got worried it might start bleeding. She gave a shaky nod and quietly said, "Okay." Edmund was a bit surprised by her approval, but then his face bloomed as he gently grabbed her hand. For a moment, he marveled how soft her hands were, despite all the Quidditch she played and all the work her relatives made her do. He rubbed the back of her hand with his thumb and could feel her body getting hotter. "Ah, sorry about that. Your hands are really soft for someone who does a lot of physical work." His pathetic little attempt did nothing to ease her heart which was beating rapidly against her chest. Cursing himself inwardly, Edmund just forcefully pulled her inside his mindscape. He quickly freed her hand from his grasp and walked towards a large couch that had appeared facing a giant white screen. Soon Iris followed him and sat at the other edge of the couch. No one spoke a word as the scene of the Great Hall appeared on the screen. "I have another clone that is transformed as a small bug and is following clone Iris closely. We'll be looking through the bug clone's eyes without the mosaic vision." Iris got even more curious about Edmund's strange ability. In the Great Hall, Edmund's clone hinged as Iris walked up to the Gryffindor table and sat in an empty seat with no other student nearby. Soon, Hermione entered the hall and upon seeing Iris, she walked swiftly towards her with a book held against her breast. Hermione sat right next to Iris and bombarded her with questions. "Where were you last night? I was looking all over the school for you. Obviously I returned before curfew. But I never saw you in your bed. We're out of the dorms after curfew. You shouldn't do that. You should follow the rules. Why did you enter the tournament by cheating? How did you even do it? You're not that good in studies. Who helped you put your name in the goblet? You told me you wanted nothing to do with the tournament. Did you lie to me? I was very hurt last night. You shouldn't have lied to me." Finally she was out of breath and stopped. Every other student in the hall was listening to Hermione as she was quite loud while asking her questions. Even the teachers and ghosts were intently observing Iris for her reaction. Looking completely bored, clone Iris eyed her and asked blandly, "Huh? Did you say something?" "Hermione. Students. Teachers. Ghosts. Filch. This is Norris. Original Iris. What if Naruto was the descendant of a wizard in Harry Potter?" End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.